Nkosi Buthelez's initial comments on Newsroom Africa in an interview there, where he had prefaced his comments by categorically stating, and I quote here, "It's not government's responsibility to deal with corruption." However, later on, if you listen to that interview, he later on clarifies what he means and says that while government must take the lead, fighting the scourge of corruption must be an all-of-society undertaking involving the private sector, civil society, academia, and citizens in general. But despite the clarification, as you can imagine, those initial sentiments, quote-unquote, "it's not government's responsibility to deal with corruption," in the face of everything else that's being revealed about the cost of corruption, including the cost of employees in government who are on suspension, on paid suspension pending investigations. That debate has not died down, it has continued. So I'll be speaking to the CEO of the organization Undoing Tax Abuse, that's OUTA. Wayne Duvenage will weigh in on this debate, and that conversation coming up at 6:45. Then, Johannesburg residents, do you look at eThekwini and say, man, we wish our city was as jacked up as that one? Well, the president says he has a plan to fix your rapidly dilapidating city as good as he fixed eThekwini with a presidential working group. President Cyril Ramaphosa, you'll remember, met with leaders of Gauteng as well as the city of Joburg last week. And now he says the presidential Johannesburg Working Group will emulate its eThekwini counterparts and tackle, among other issues, governance and financial sustainability, water and sanitation, electricity issues, inner city rejuvenation, and safety and law enforcement. I'll be speaking to the Johannesburg Crisis Alliance's Nishan Bolton, and that conversation is coming up at about 10 to 7 in this hour. But I also want to hear from you. Are you comforted? Does this proposal of a presidential Johannesburg Working Group inspire confidence in you? If you live in eThekwini, hey, please, by all means, do share with us your experience. Did the involvement of an eThekwini Presidential Working Group have the desired effect that you are starting to see a turnaround in the fortunes of the city where you live in eThekwini? Can Joburg residents take comfort in knowing that help is on the way? Because my goodness, anyone who lives in Joburg will tell you, do we need this situation to start turning around in terms of the general collapse and dilapidation of the city of Joburg? Infrastructure, the traffic lights, the water infrastructure, electricity infrastructure, all of those just make up a perfect storm of non-delivery in the city of Joburg. So the president says, worry not, help is on the way. Weigh in on that conversation for me. And then in the second hour, we'll tell you this. Hilton College, it's the elite school in KwaZulu-Natal, in the area of Howick, if I'm not mistaken, just generally in that region. But it's known for, those costs that we always talk about, 430,000 rand a year. 430,000 rand a year in terms of the fees that are charged. But now it's once again at the center of a land claim dispute. This after the Nxamalala tribe, led by Nkosi Simelane Zuma, has again been given the opportunity to fight to reclaim ancestral land they allege that their forebears were forcibly removed from over a century ago. The claim was first lodged in 1998 but was rejected in 2005 by the Regional Land Claims Commissioner, saying that it was a tribal jurisdiction claim as opposed to a proper restitution claim. But that issue has now come before the Land Claims Court, which has now said that decision of the Regional Land Claims Commissioner was irrational, and the claim is good and proper and should be considered, and has been taken back to the Regional Land Claims Commissioner for a fresh consideration of that claim. So the bottom line, Hilton College is once again at the center of a land claim that has been lodged by the Nxamalala clan. There was a process at some point where there was discussion of a financial compensation, but that was also halted at some point. The Land Claims Court now saying that actually go back to those processes that have to do with dealing with this land claim in a proper manner. Kaya Sithole, the analyst, has followed this quite closely, and I used to follow his writings on it at some point where It was almost obsessive of Kaya, rightly so. I mean, it is an issue of national importance. So he will come through and share some insights with us, and that conversation coming up at about 7:10. Then later on in the show, we'll be in conversation with Deputy Minister Thulasizwe Simelane. We'll be talking about a proposal to use the Expropriation Act to basically take over the buildings that have been abandoned in the in cities across the country. Let me put it that way. That's part of this conversation about rejuvenation of inner cities. We'll be talking about how exactly those modalities of using the Expropriation Act will work out, particularly given that that act is still being contested by, among others, those who serve in the government of national unity, including the minister who's meant to be responsible for its implementation. So that's how we are looking over the next 3 hours. Of course, all of your regulars, we have them locked and loaded for you once again on this Monday morning. We have N. Musa back with your news updates every half hour. Rob Byrne with your traffic every 15 minutes or so. Zaikan is watching your sport throughout the morning. Dauleng Lechela has your economics, business and market news covered. Sipho Mantula with your Africa update just before 8 a.m. Your calls, the number to dial 086 000 2032. Your WhatsApp voice notes, please send them to 061 410 4107. On social media, we are at SAFM Radio. Let me say that again. At SAFM Radio, that is on X, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And we are live on our YouTube channel, SAFM Radio, and we are SAFM Radio on Facebook. This is SAFM. We are leading the conversations that move us. The first hour of the Monday edition of the Morning Brief starts now.
Jazz lovers, the wait is over. Africa's grandest gathering returns on the 25th to the 26th of April at the Cape Town International Convention Center. Experience 2 nights of soul-stirring jazz, electrifying collaborations, and over 30 world-class artists across 4 iconic stages. Don't miss this unforgettable musical experience. Get your tickets now at ticketmaster.co.za. Brought to you by Independent Media, proud media partner of the Cape Town International Jazz Festival.
Whether it is a CCMA referral, problems with a mechanic, or unfair blacklisting, Clientele legal plans are affordable, and you receive up to 670,000 rands worth of legal services per year. We cover civil, criminal, and labor-related matters. Our legal team will be your support 24 hours a day. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and a licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
The Daily News Diary on SAFM.
I know what's leading on my diary. Your return. Good morning. Morning, Anne.
Good morning, Thulas.
Finally. Nice of you to finally join us.
Well,
again,
thank you.
Yeah.
I must say, I actually did miss everything.
While
everyone. Listeners, including you,
while
everyone.
you were living your nice life out there. What's leading this morning?
Well, we're looking at the recent murder of the whistleblower in the Timothy Omotoso rape and trafficking case that once again highlighted the danger for those who speak out against criminal activity, and the ANC in the Eastern Cape, they've strongly condemned the killing of Pamela Mabini. She's a community activist and whistleblower in the Timothy Omotoso rape and trafficking case that was gunned down outside a home in Gqeberha. We also have Parliament's Finance Cluster that will be briefing the media on their oversight and accountability role, and this is in ensuring that the budget serves the needs of all South Africans. Efforts by the MK party to convince the Finance Minister to abandon any tax increase. And the party is set to march to the National Treasury's offices in Pretoria today to protest against the proposed increase in VAT. The Finance Minister, Enoch Godongwana, will present his delayed budget speech on Wednesday after the first attempt was delayed due to disputes within the Government of National Unity. The trial of the 7-year-old Jocelyn Smith enters its second week in the Western Cape Circuit High Court, and the first week last week saw several police officers testifying about Jocelyn's disappearance in February last year, with the state alleging that she was kidnapped and trafficked. And we will also be previewing the joint media briefing by the Office of Health Standards Compliance and the Health Ombud in releasing the findings of the risk-based inspection and investigation into the allegations against the Helen Joseph Hospital. I don't know if you still remember the video that was posted by Tom London. He posted it on various social media platforms, alleging that during his admission in hospital in September last year, he had experienced neglect and rude behavior from hospital staff, including doctors. Additionally, he also reported that the hospital's infrastructure was in disrepair. And the Electoral Commission of South Africa will be hosting the e-voting conference, and it is to facilitate an informed national dialogue that's on the feasibility, sustainability, as well as policy implications of electronic voting in the country, and this conference serving as an opportunity for South Africans to actually initiate steps that will shape the future of voting in the country. And just lastly, the Deputy Minister of Police is expected to lead a crime prevention program in Barberton today, and this program seeks to strengthen crime prevention efforts and promote safer learning environments. We know that in the past, schools in Barberton have reportedly been problematic as well as facing challenges of gangs. So some of the stories that we will be focusing on this morning.
All right, Anne, good to have you back. That's Anne Musa. Look out for her updates every half hour here on the Morning Brief.
Thulasizwe Simelane on SAFM.
All right, let's give you a sense of how your weather is looking on this Monday morning. There's just one warning. It says extremely high fire danger conditions are expected over the northern parts of the west of the Northern Cape. The rest of your weather looks like this. Pretoria will be cloudy with scattered thunder showers, becoming partly cloudy in the afternoon with a minimum of 19 and a maximum of 29. Johannesburg will be cloudy with scattered thunder showers, becoming partly cloudy in the afternoon, 18 to 28. Mbombela, partly cloudy, becoming cloudy with scattered afternoon showers and thunder showers, 20 to 28. Polokwane, partly cloudy with isolated afternoon showers and thunder showers, 19 to 29. Mahikeng will be partly cloudy, 16 to 29. Bloemfontein will be partly cloudy, 17 to 27. Kimberley, partly cloudy, 16 to 32. Uppington, fine, 19 to 36. Cape Town will be partly cloudy, becoming fine, 18 to 27. George will be cloudy with light rain in the morning, becoming partly cloudy, 16 to 25. Gqeberha will be partly cloudy with showers and rain in the morning with a minimum of 18 and a maximum of 24. East London will be partly cloudy with showers at times, 17 to 27. Durban will be partly cloudy with isolated showers and thunder showers, 20 to 27. Richards Bay will be partly cloudy with isolated showers and thunder showers, 21 to 27. And finally, Pietermaritzburg will have morning fog, otherwise partly cloudy with isolated showers and thunder showers, 15 to 24.
Bafana are taking on Lesotho at the new Peter Mokaba Stadium on the 21st of March 2025 at 6 p.m. for the FIFA World Cup 2026 qualifier. Come early, dress to commemorate Human Rights Day, and support Bafana for a chance to win prizes from our host, Limpopo Government and Polokwane Municipality. Gates open at 3 p.m. and tickets start from 70 Rand for adults with special rates available at 40 Rand for children under 12 at all Ticket Pro outlets. If you can't make it to Polokwane, catch the game live on SABC2 at 6 p.m. or visit sabcsport.com. For more details, visit safa.net and Bafana on X and TikTok.
Think bigger than just a banking partner. Think a team of specialized experts supporting you to make better financial decisions to enable your growth aspirations. Think a strategic partnership providing indispensable advice to help you make the right moves. Think bigger. Think Nedbank Commercial Banking. For more information, visit nedbank.co.za. See money differently. Nedbank. We're a licensed FSP and registered credit provider.
The citizens are not willing to settle for anything less than a win.
And now it's with Haaland and on to Foden. Foden to finish the game. And he does.
However, the Seagulls want want to triple their efforts to collect valuable points against reigning champs.
Lovely touch for Mitoma, and Mitoma could be away. Here it is. Mitoma one-on-one. Mitoma, delightful.
This is the Premier League. Witness the superb contest, Manchester City FC versus Brighton and Hove Albion FC. Saturday, 15 March at 4:30 p.m. Live on S3. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Worldview Update, bringing you closer to international or global news.
23 minutes after 6 on this Monday, one of the deadliest two-day periods in Syria's over a decade-long conflict has left hundreds of people dead, including many civilians. The violence began when fighters loyal to the ousted Assad regime ambushed Syrian security forces in Latakia province, triggering intense clashes and brutal revenge killings. Fear grips civilians and international outrage is mounting. I'm joined now by Naim Jina, who is a senior researcher for humanity at the Mapungubwe Institute for Strategic Reflection, MISTRA. Good morning to you, Naim, and thank you for your time. So, when the Assad regime fell in December last year, it felt as if there wasn't even a remnant of support that he enjoyed in the country. But it would seem there always was a remnant of support. In fact, not just a remnant of support, but support strong enough to even pose a threat to the stability of the country. Tell me what the context is for these clashes that we saw flare up last week.
So, yes, you're correct. Remember that in December, when these forces from the north and the south went towards Damascus, Damascus fell within 10 days, and every city in between from north and south fell, and the capital within 10 days. The Syrian army kind of just disappeared at that time. Of course, a large part of the Syrian army was conscripts, and they would have just gone home. But there was a permanent officer class as well, which people would have taken off their uniforms, but their loyalties would still have been there. So the fact that it was quiet for a couple of months didn't mean that they suddenly changed their loyalties, etc. And so on Thursday we found this attempt at mounting some kind of an opposition, an armed military opposition. And as you said, security forces killed. What happened after that incident was that, and not just security forces killed, but they actually took over a good part of territory, were controlling a good part of territory and roads, etc. Subsequent to that, we found that the Syrian new kind of security forces army went in to quell this uprising or this insurgency, but it was also joined by many civilians, armed civilians, and between the two of them, things got kind of out of control. And part of the thing is that there's unfortunately among many Syrians a great hatred for the sect from which Bashar al-Assad and his family and Hafiz al-Assad, his father, came from. And so many of the people who were attacked were not former soldiers or Assad loyalists, etc., but civilians.
How concerning is that aspect? I believe, is it pronounced Alawites, the minority group from which the former President Bashar al-Assad comes from?
Alawites, yes. It's very concerning. It's very concerning because Syria, which for a long time had people had lived with kind of tolerance, acceptance, intermarried, etc. Over the past decade and a half, that kind of sectarian issues and sectarian violence even has escalated, and so we're now at a point where this kind of thing can easily happen. So it is concerning that since December we didn't have anything major like this, but now we do, and whether that will spark something else is very worrying. And I think that's why Shara, the new president, he said that he's appointing a committee to investigate this, make sure it doesn't happen again, etc. We wait to see whether that committee actually does its job and how effective it is in solving the problem. But unless there's serious attempts made at reconciliation across sectarian lines and serious attempts made at transitional justice for victims of the past, I think that this could happen again.
And how much of a test is this for the new leadership, the new administration, Naim? Because when they took over, there were these concerns that, instability would be the new order of the day. But they came in with strong assurances that they were going to build one Syria for all Syrians, regardless of, their background and sectarian interests and religious interests. How much of a test will this be to see whether they walk the talk on this?
It is a big test. So whether that committee does its job and holds people accountable, and Shara has said that even members of the security forces, some of them have been arrested yesterday, that even they will be held to account. If he actually follows through on those promises, then I think that there's, the citizenry will believe that test is being met successfully. If he doesn't, and if people who are responsible for the killings of civilians are allowed to get away, that would be a big problem and could result in violence and conflict moving forward.
The loyalists of Bashar al-Assad are not seriously thinking that they can mount a comeback, allowing him to return from Russia, are they?
Well, I'm not sure whether the objective is to get him to return from Russia, but to reestablish their kind of position in the country. And they might get outside support, etc. But for now, his return is not a big demand.
All right, I've got to thank you for your time and your insights. That's Naim Jina. He's Senior Researcher for Humanity at the Mapungubwe Institute for Strategic Reflection. That's MISTRA. 6:30, let's check in with Ann Musa with the latest news headlines.
Good morning. Thanks to us in the headlines. The Thulasizwe party in Gauteng will be marching against the proposed VAT increase this morning at the Pretoria Church Square. The march by the party follows a postponement of the national budget last month, which was set to be delivered by the Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana. Godongwana will now table the budget in Cape Town on Wednesday. The death toll in the horror bus crash on the N2 at Mandeni on the KwaZulu-Natal North Coast has risen to 9. More than 60 passengers suffered injuries ranging from critical to minor. And the U.S. federal immigration officials have detained a Columbia University graduate student in New York who played a prominent role in pro-Palestinian protests last year in response to the war in Gaza. I'll have details on these and other stories at 7.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Very busy on Route 1 out of Pretoria. A crash down by Carsfontein Road. So traffic's already pushing back through Linwood, back towards the N4, and it'll just work its way back to Storenville. So if you're about to join from Montana side, expect a wall of traffic as you make your way down through the Carsfontein. Behind that, the N4 inbound to get into the N1, coming off the Emelohleli Highway, quite slow already back as far as Watermeyer. Once you get past that, you've got Monday volumes, jamming things up between John Foster and the New Road exit. Coming in from the other side of Joburg, it's really busy this morning between Ormonde and Empire Road. Monday morning can see a bit more volume, and that is noticeable today. Also, the R59 just sitting into traffic up towards Michelle Avenue. Over in Durban, the roadworks have overrun slightly this morning on the M4 at Jacobs Clarewood have been, I'd say they've been lifted, but there is just a touch of a slowdown in that area. It was clear, but it's just starting to slow up again, so we'll keep an eye on that one for you. There are some pressures on the N2 going north. A breakdown after Spaghetti Junction, so the normal traffic that comes from the M7 and jams comes through the roadworks towards Westwood Mall, just being held further by that breakdown. And coming out of Chatsworth, quite heavy this morning. Long backlogs of traffic on the Higginson Highway. Cape Town, a crash on the N2 into town by Meway in front of Khayelitsha. That's pushed the queue back towards Baden Powell. And there's a lot of pressure just off the highway. Meway and Old Fora Road on the Mfuleni side of the N2. That side of Khayelitsha quite heavy. And lights are down Stellenbosch Arterial at Noinsfontein. So all sorts of traffic in that part of Kales River, Blackheath. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Good morning to you, Zai. So the one fixture is confirmed as far as the Nedbank Cup semi-finals are concerned. Just Kaizer Chiefs now waiting to see who's coming.
Yeah, is it going to be Sundowns? Is it going to be Sekhukhune? But if you were a betting man, which I'm sure you are not, they're bracing themselves for... You never know. You're bracing yourself, well, the Chiefs fans, that is, for a semi-final clash with Mamelodi Sundowns. It's the Nedbank Cup semi-final, but first Sundowns need to get past Sekhukhune United. That match was, it was postponed over the weekend, and we're hoping that it will get underway. Pirates will... They'll face Maruma Gallants at Orlando Stadium. Gallants defeating Durban City 4-1 on penalties. The defending champion Pirates are hoping for another cup win. Elsewhere, Chelsea edged a battling Leicester City 1-0 as Enzo Maresca's side move up to fourth in the Premier League. Chelsea moving back into Champions League place, and that's thanks to a fourth consecutive home league win, while Ruud van Nistelrooy's side Leicester, they stay second from the bottom, having suffered a 12th loss in their last 13 top-flight games. In the meantime, Heung-min Son scored a late penalty to salvage a point for Tottenham Hotspur against Bournemouth in a 2-2 draw, and this was after he was fouled by Kepa Arrizabalaga. The result sees pressure somewhat off on Ange Postecoglou ahead of Thursday's do-or-die Europa League second leg against AZ Alkmaar. Here's Ange Postecoglou.
Yeah, we kind of added to the chaos a little bit. I think some of it was self-inflicted, especially in the first half. Just with the ball, we're kind of really careless with our passing, and that allowed sort of the game to be played on sort of the terms Bournemouth would like, with their transition football. So, chaotic.
And cricket action. India held their nerve to defeat New Zealand by 4 wickets and win the ICC Champions Trophy in Dubai yesterday. India reached 254 for 6 to secure the win following New Zealand's innings of 251 for 7. Golf news. Ladies PGA Tour rookie Rio Takeda carded an 8-under par 64 to cruise to a 6-stroke victory at the Blue Bay LG PGA Hainan Island, China tournament. Takeda captured her second Ladies PGA Tour title after recording a bogey-free round to finish on 7-under 271. Meanwhile, Russell Henley won the PGA Tour Arnold Palmer Invitational in Orlando, Florida. The American finished the fourth and final round 11 under par, 1 stroke ahead of Colin Morikawa, who led most of the afternoon. And tennis action, defending champion Iga Swiatek edged closer to an unprecedented third straight Indian Wells WTA title, overwhelming Diana Yastremska 6-love, 6-2 to reach the fourth round. Katie Bolter was knocked out of the Indian Wells tournament, suffering a straight sets defeat in the third round. The British number one was beaten 6-love, 7-5 by the 7th seed Elena Rybakina. And finally, Stefano Tsitsipas beat Matteo Berrettini in straight sets in the round of 32 at Indian Wells in California. That's how we wrap up sport on the morning brief. We'll serve up more top of the hour. I'm Zai Khan.
The business update on SAFM.
Good morning to you, Ndauling. So let's start in the United States. Lots of instability, naturally, over the last few weeks. But the one thing that you are telling us this morning remains stable is that country's labor market.
That's right, Tulas, and morning. So growth in February, or rather labor market growth in February came in at 151,000. This, however, was below forecasts of 170,000. Now, growth nonetheless, even as President Donald Trump reduced the federal workforce. The unemployment rate in the meantime edged up to 4.1% from 4%, and federal government employment declined by 10,000 1,000. But government payrolls overall increased by 11,000. Now, many of the layoffs related to Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency occurred after the reporting period, so their impact won't be seen until the March report. The healthcare industry added the biggest job gains, followed by financial activities. Experts in the meantime remain cautious, citing the ongoing Trump turmoil and its potential impact on the economy. Now, despite these concerns, the labor force participation rate dropped to 62.4%, and this was the lowest level since January 2023. The broader measure of unemployment, including discouraged workers and those in part-time positions, jumped to 8%, its highest level since October 2021.
And then tell me about deflation. We've been focusing on this story quite a bit as far as China is concerned, and that concern about deflation continues in China.
That's right, Thulas. And I think the biggest issue this time around is that while we were seeing deflation occurring, signs of deflation occurring, inflation was still rising. This time around, it's reversed those gains, falling in February for the first time in 13 months. Inflation easing to 0.7% on a year-on-year basis, and this was attributed to weak demand and the early timing of the Lunar New Year holiday. The National Bureau of Statistics reported that consumer price index fell 0.2% on a monthly basis. This decline is a concern for China's policymakers, who are struggling to stimulate domestic demand and consumer spending. Now, this morning's print further heightens deflation concerns. China's inflation target for this year is 2%, but experts say the country likely to fall short of that goal. The consumer price index was flat for 2024, rising only 0.2%. In the meantime, producer price index, which measures wholesale prices, fell to 2.2% last month.
And then give us our first roundup of market activity for this morning, Dowling.
So U.S. markets closed in the green on Friday, and this despite job growth coming in below expectations. The Nasdaq led the gains, up 0.7%, and that positive sentiment also being seen in local markets, with the JSE mostly in the green in Friday's session. The all-share up 0.3%, and that was fueled mainly by gains in the Resources 10 complex, up 2.6%. On the currency front, the rand losing some steam after reaching a 4-month high last week. It's currently sitting at 18.33 to the dollar. Then over in Asia, stocks taking the week off on a shaky note, with stocks mixed as traders digest Chinese inflation.
You know that thing that MPs do when one speaker is in full flight and, delivering their speech, and then they say, yes. Will the honorable member take a question? Can I do that to you now? Will the honorable member take a question? What happened to your voice?
You always put me on the spot, Labs. Always put me on the spot. Let's just say I did a lot this weekend.
Okay, darling. We'll talk a bit later. The honorable member has taken a question. That's Dowling Lechela. She'll be back with a second update. Her voice will hold, I assure you that. She'll come back just after 7:30 with another update for you.
Fizzy drinks and fruit juices can make our children sick. Sugar is dumped into their bodies with every sip, which could lead to obesity, heart disease, and diabetes as they age. We must protect them from drinks high in sugar. Demand a stricter health promotion levy now. Sign the petition on heala.org. That's HEALA.org.
Unlock a world of benefits. Welcome to SABC's TV License Rewards program. Ready to make your viewing experience more rewarding? Say hello to perks that go beyond just watching TV. Join us today at sabctvlicenserewards.co.za and instantly receive your first reward. But wait, there's more. You can get up to 500 Rand back. Become part of something bigger, a movement where watching TV isn't just a hobby, it's a catalyst for positive change. Register now at sabctvlicenserewards.co.za and open the door to a world of benefits. Plus, Every time you tune in, you're making a difference. T's and C's apply. Remember, TV license fees aren't just payments, they make a difference. Copperbelt ladies and Durban ladies both want to collect maximum points in the early days of the season. Who will dominate this 90 minutes? Limpopo or KZN? This is the Hollywood Men's Super League. Catch Mzansi Queens of the beautiful game. Copperbelt ladies versus Durban ladies on Saturday 15 March at 11:30 a.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
From 10 to 16 March 2025, the South African National Biodiversity Institute, SANBI, is hosting its first National Gardens Week. Visitors can enjoy free entry to all national botanical and zoological gardens across South Africa, including Kirstenbosch National Botanical Garden and the Pretoria Zoo. This year's theme, Grow Your Joy, invites visitors to embrace nature, wellness and community by taking a peaceful walk, joining a guided tour, or learning about conservation in some of the country's most breathtaking green spaces. Nature has never been this open to all. Celebrate, protect and enjoy biodiversity wealth. Visit sanbi.org for details.
Is there ever a bad time for a good conversation? SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
All right, let's take this conversation forward now. The Public Service and Administration Minister, Mzamo Buthelezi, has ignited a debate on corruption. Part of the debate was perhaps triggered by Buthelezi's initial comments in a Newsroom Africa interview, where he had prefaced his comments by categorically stating it's not government's responsibility to deal with corruption. However, later on in the interview, he clarifies that he means that while government must take the lead, fighting the scourge of corruption must be an all-of-society undertaking involving the private sector, civil society, academia, and citizens in general. Let's take the conversation forward. I'm joined by Wayne Duvenage, who is the CEO of the organization Undoing Tax Abuse. Good morning to you, Wayne, and thank you for your time. When you hear the words at the start of that interview, quote unquote, it's not government's responsibility to deal with corruption, you are naturally stunned. But later on, he explains what he means when he talks about an all-inclusive approach, saying that government alone shall never pass muster in terms of fighting corruption. Does the message come out clear what the minister's understanding is about the roles and responsibilities in terms of fighting corruption?
No, it doesn't come out clear. And I think the biggest problem here is that the minister and government officials are not owning the problem. So when they turn to others and say, well, you know, corruption is a multifaceted problem. We know that. Everybody knows that. You know, corruption has got two sides of a coin. It's not just government, it's the private sector players and very often relatives and friends of government employees who are set up as these businesses. The reality is that government holds all the cards when it comes to challenging corruption. And if it doesn't own this problem and fight it and tackle it, then nobody else will come on board. You know, civil society has been on board, insiders inside government, whistleblowers outside government. They're all willing to participate, but they will never participate if their actions are futile, if the whistleblowing is not safe, if the systems are not safe. So to say that, well, everybody must come on board and not create the environment to do so it's crazy. So the minister's not owning the problem. And I think this is the thing, that there's a victimhood mentality that says, well, until you all come on board, you're not going to get on top of this problem. They've got to lead the way.
That's the question I was about to ask you, actually, Wayne. They've got to lead the way is what you say. Are you saying right now they are not leading the way and the other sectors of society are playing their role? Can that be said, though, given the fact that part of what the minister points out is that in instances where there's bribery, for example, the briber, it would be someone external to government. So, you know, even in the private sector, is the private sector, for example, rising to the occasion in terms of playing their part with the leadership, of course, of government?
I'll give you another analogy, and I come out of the business world. Imagine a CEO of a company saying to its shareholders, "Look, we can't make profits here because there's too much theft and pilferage happening outside." He'd get fired on the spot. What you need to do as business and as government is put in place the robust systems that prevent the theft so that you can be profitable. You put in the standard operating procedures, the robust whistleblowing platforms. So to say that, yes, there's people outside that are doing the bribery, of course they're going to be that. They're going to take the chances, and there's a formula for corruption and bribery. It's when the gains are bigger than the consequences. So if you know you're not going to get caught and the gains are good, you're going to take chances. That's just there's a lot of people out there that don't see that doing wrong is wrong, and they will take those chances. Government needs to put the systems in place to prevent that. So if I try and bribe an official, I will get caught. But if I know that I'm not going to get caught, then or the official knows that, well, this is an easy chance to take because the supply chain management system, the procurement system is weak. We're going to take these chances and get away with it. And even when they're caught, this is another part of the problem. Even when people are found wanting and the loot is there, nothing happens because there are people higher up the chain implicated, and so they don't take action. And you can see that in the health systems in Gauteng. All of the exposure is there. The guilty people are lined up. What happens? Nothing. So there's no consequences. So government has to own this problem and lead from the top and drive a culture that's going to fix this challenge.
All right, let's leave it there for this morning. That's Wayne Duvenage, Outer CEO. Listening to that is the Minister of Public Service and Administration, Nkosi Mzamo Buthelezi. Good morning to you, Minister. Thank you for your time. What did you mean when you used the words? And I know you gave much broader context later on in the interview, but you started with the words, and I quote here, "It's not government's responsibility to deal with corruption," end quote. What did you mean by that?
No, I think in the initial start of the interview, you were very clear, and I was very, very happy and proud about yourself of having mentioned that. I clarified that point because there's a serious danger out there of people who are selective when they are listening. They want to quote you out of context. You talk about the whole paragraph, then they only pick only one word in a paragraph, which would be meaningless, of course, because it does not have the context. Two things here. My comments were based from the discussions of the G20 Anti-Corruption Unit, and I was having a detailed account in terms of such things. We've got 4 priorities as the G20 Anti-Corruption Unit, and then this is what I said. The third priority, which is our priority number 3, is to foster inclusive participation by mobilizing the public and the private sector, civil society, academia, and to work collaboratively in preventing and conducting corruption. Because we realize that fighting corruption cannot be a responsibility of government alone. It's a multi-sectoral approach. Where is this coming from? This does not negate the fact that government should take the lead. Government is responsible. But we are saying here, government alone cannot, because it's not only government who is involved. It's many people. Where many people choose to shy away. I will give you a typical example here. Issues of corruption involves money laundering amongst many. Only banks are responsible for keeping our money. So that means there shall never be money laundering if banks are not involved. But no one is speaking about that. And when I speak to active citizens, I went fair to say our citizens here are not just passive recipients of governance, but they are the drivers of accountability and reform. My statement was calling everybody to say we all agree that government holistically is responsible, but we must all play our fair share.
So Minister, the argument from organizations, from organizations such as Outer is that while you clarify that you maintain that government has a leadership role to play, and you are calling on other sectors to come to the party and play their role, the argument is actually those sectors have been playing their role, reporting corruption, advocating, for instance, around the protection of whistleblowers. But you as government have not stepped up to that leadership role. I think that's the criticism now.
That's
For
a
instance,
point of-
why has it taken so long to get to a point where we even have a bill before Parliament? We don't have it yet, but we are promised it will be there later on this year. Why does something as simple as introducing a whistleblower bill take so long?
That is a point for a debate. We all understand that our processes in South Africa, when it comes to enacting bills, takes so much time. And that is something that government is looking at to say, how can we actually fast track our processes in terms of how we respond to people? But that also does not mean that there is nothing that is happening. I can ask you today to invite the Department of Justice and Correctional Services, where the SIU can come here and give a detailed account of how much billions we have prevented from being embezzled, how much billions we have actually recovered, how much assets we have recovered, how much we have advanced in terms of making collaboration with other countries now, in terms of recovering those monies that have been shifted from South Africa. There is work that is done. Government is doing so much. The problem is people, as I said, they are very selective. They are picky and choosy as to what they want to advance, because there is a narrative out there which seeks to undermine the gains of government and pretend as if no one is doing anything, even including the issues now of whistleblowers. Yes, the fact that this was a subject matter, the fact that South Africa has put it as its priority, shows how much interest we've got in trying to protect them, of which we are doing. But we were saying it's not enough. We can always improve, because Minister, we understand what is at stake here.
All right, Minister, let's leave it there for this morning. That's Minister Inkosi Mzamo Buthelezi, who is Minister of Public Service and Administration.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Heavy one coming through Pretoria this morning. Crash and one south at Garsfontein. Very heavy from Stormville. Durban's N2 is sitting heavy from the M7 through towards Mangena Road. And Cape Town this morning. The N2 inbound incidents at Khayelitsha cleared, but there's a backlog of traffic from Baden Powell inbound towards the R300. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Hey neighbor, what happened to you last night? We were vibing, watching the game, and then our team scored, and the next thing you were gone.
Askies, I missed the goal. You know, just before our team scored, Eskom came and then our electricity was disconnected.
Yo, so much drama. What happened?
We got a fine for buying electricity tokens from an illegal vendor.
And then your fancy orange jumpsuit?
Oh, just in case I get arrested for not paying the fine, Pela.
Ungathatha chance. Buy your electricity legally. Stop buying electricity from illegal vendors and tampering with electricity meters.
This is a story of Vodacom's impact.
I didn't know anything about computer. I learned a computer after I passed my matric, and Vodacom is doing an excellent job in the youth of South Africa.
This is why we do it. Over 1,800 Youth Academy students trained, with 250 placed in ICT coordinator roles at our schools of excellence. That's why we're the #1 CSI contributor for 8 years running. See more at now.vodacom.coza. Further together, Vodacom.
March is International Women's Month, a time to honor the strength, resilience, and rights of women everywhere. The GBVF Response Fund is sharing a reminder that women's rights are human rights. But today, amidst global and national instability, women's equality is under threat. Now is the time to reclaim our power, demanding fair access to social services and opportunities. Together, from our homes to our communities, let's raise our voices and create a future where every woman and girl can thrive. Because when women rise, nations rise. This is an SABC-supported initiative.
Thulasizwe Simelane on the Morning Brief. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
Hey, Joburg residents, wary of a city whose roads, water, electricity and other public infrastructure is crumbling before your eyes? The president says he has a rescue plan for you. After engaging with Gauteng government and the city leaders over 2 days last week, President Cyril Ramaphosa has announced a presidential Johannesburg working group, and he'd like you to look to eThekwini to see what kind of intervention can be possible with that model. President Ramaphosa says the presidential Johannesburg working group will emulate its eThekwini counterparts and tackle, among others, governance and financial sustainability, water and sanitation, electricity, inner city rejuvenation, and safety and law enforcement. Let's speak now to Nishan Bolton, who is from the Johannesburg Crisis Alliance. Good morning to you, Nishan, and thank you for your time. Did enough detail come through what this presidential Johannesburg working group will do, other than what we are accustomed to by now, an acknowledgement of how bad things are in the city?
No, good morning and greetings to your listeners. There wasn't sufficient detail. We hope that that detail will emerge quite soon. We think that the areas of focus, however, correct, and this might well be a solution or lead to solutions to the various problems that plagues the city.
So saying improving service delivery, for example, is quite easy, and it's one of those listed among the areas of intervention. So we have no idea what that will mean. Where exactly does this presidential working group need to start by way of improving service delivery?
I think all 135 wards in Johannesburg have one or another issue that they think requires improvement. So it's not rocket science to figure out where are the big service delivery problems. I think the key challenge is whether the city has the resources, the capacity, and the willingness to fix up what needs to be done. What we have seen is that with the G20, suddenly there was that capacity, there was willingness, there was availability of resources to improve, for example, the freeway streetlights, or to do major cleanups in specific areas that were deemed to have been G20 routes. So when it is required, I think that what that illustrated is that the capacity is there. It needs to be expanded throughout the length and breadth of the city, however.
What does that say to an ordinary Johannesburg resident, that when the G20 is coming, and in fact there was a lot of focus, in my opinion, there was a lot of focus on the G20. I mean, even the apologies about letting the president down and the guarantees had to do with the G20 more than they had to do with the resident in Johannesburg. What does that say to an ordinary resident?
Well, you can take the cynical view, or I take the view that what this showed is that, the issues that were left unattended for years were suddenly being addressed. And what that indicated was that with some degree of pressure, things can be done. And I'm hoping through these working groups, that pressure is sustained both in the working groups and must be sustained outside by civil society organizations. Because, to have fixed up the freeway lights that were off for a number of years indicated suddenly that it could be done. It wasn't major infrastructure issues. It was issues of just coordinating the replacement of light bulbs in some instances. So I think I'm grateful that the G20 highlighted the fact that the city can do things when it is under pressure to do it. And pressure is what we must then intensify, both in these working groups if we happen to be invited, and more so from outside of the city.
All right, I've got to thank you for your time this morning. That's Nishan Bolton, who is from the Johannesburg Crisis Alliance. Let's check in now with N. Musa with the latest news.
Outsurance will go out of their way to try and save you money on your car insurance. If they can't, ask for 500 Rand. SMS out to 30754. Now that's good news.
In our top stories, MK party to march against proposed VAT increase and pro-Palestinian student detained by U.S. immigration officials. Good morning. The Thulasizwe party in Gauteng will be marching against the proposed VAT increase this morning at the Pretoria Church Square. The march by the party follows a postponement of the national budget last month, which was set to be delivered by the Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana. Godongwana will now table the budget in Cape Town on Wednesday. This is after parties in the Government of National Unity rejected a 2% VAT increase, citing that it would have a negative impact on South Africans. Sibahle Mota reports.
The city of Tshwane is expected to be a sea of green, black and yellow as MKP members march to the South African Reserve Bank and National Treasury against a VAT increase. Thulasizwe party says that today's march is set to raise awareness of the devastating impact of the VAT increase on low-income households and small businesses. The party says that the march will address issues that include the regressive nature of VAT and its unequal impact on the poor, the need for a more progressive taxation system, and the effects of VAT on small businesses and entrepreneurs.
The ANC National Working Committee, the NWC, will meet with the party's Free State Provincial Executive Committee today after visiting structures over the weekend. This weekend, members of the ANC NWC met with structures of the party's renewal program. The NWC has refuted claims of a possible restructuring of the PEC in the province amid reports of simmering tensions. The NWC also met with the top ANC national officials, including party President Cyril Ramaphosa, yesterday. The death toll in the horror bus crash on the N2 at Mandeni on the KwaZulu-Natal North Coast has risen to 9. More than 60 passengers suffered injuries ranging from critical to minor. One of the deceased is a 4-year-old child. The bus is said to have crashed down an embankment after a tyre burst yesterday afternoon. The bus was ferrying members of the 12 Apostle in Trinity Church from Richards Bay to Shaka's Kraal near Kwadukuza. Rescuers worked for several hours to free some of the victims from the wreckage. The Special Investigating Unit Head Advocate Andy Mutibi says the remuneration of whistleblowers has been discussed at the G20 Anti-Corruption Work Group technical meeting. The gathering was held in Somerset West in the Western Cape. While South Africa does have policies protecting whistleblowers and witnesses, legislation will be introduced to Parliament later this year, beefing up whistleblower protection. Mutibi says discussions held by the G20 member nations could be considered in the drafting of the new legislation.
Some of the other considerations as we do the benchmarks across the world is, whether are we not at the stage where we should consider, some form of, you call it financial incentive, to the witnesses, to the whistleblowers. So that's really still part of the process that's underway, and as the minister says, it will culminate into a bill.
The recent murder of a whistleblower in the Timothy Omotoso rape and trafficking case has highlighted the danger for those who speak out against criminal activity. Community activist and whistleblower Pamela Mabini was shot dead in the driveway of a home in KwaZakele in Gqeberha on Friday. Whistleblower activist Adelia Chowan says government has not done enough to protect whistleblowers.
We've now seen other whistleblowers that have been persecuted and those that have paid with their lives. And the most recent one is Pamela Mabini. It's unfortunate that our legislation is not amended, or the state has not done enough to protect the whistleblowers. So in order to protect the whistleblowers, the Protected Disclosure Act is insufficient. There needs to be more robust changes made with regard to the protection of the whistleblowers, which include criminalizing the persecution of whistleblowers.
And finally, U.S. federal immigration officials have detained a Columbia University graduate student in New York who played a prominent role in pro-Palestinian protests last year in response to the war in Gaza. U.S. media report ICE officials removed Mahmoud Khalil, who's a Palestinian refugee raised in Syria, from his university residence in New York. He's reported to have a visa in addition to being a green card holder. His attorney says Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents said they were acting on State Department orders to revoke both Khalil's visa and green card. Showan Bryce Peace reports that his detention comes after President Donald Trump signed an executive order in January.
That order says that it shall be the policy of the United States to combat anti-Semitism vigorously, using all available and appropriate legal tools to prosecute or remove perpetrators of unlawful anti-Semitic harassment and violence. Khalil, who is reportedly married to an American citizen who is 8 months pregnant, was transferred to an ICE detention facility in New Jersey. He was detained at a university-owned residence on Saturday night by several ICE agents. Columbia University was the epicenter of the pro-Palestinian protests in the United States last year. While some Jewish students on campus complained of anti-Semitism, others supported the movement.
Recapping the top story, the Thulasizwe party in Gauteng will be marching against the proposed VAT increase this morning at the Pretoria Church Square. For SFM News, I am Anne Musa.
Those were the top stories for this hour. Don't miss out on a possible car insurance saving. SMS out to 30754 for a quote. Outsurance, where you always get something out.
50 Rand petrol won't get you anywhere nowadays, but Outsurance is still dedicated to saving you money on your car insurance. Get a quote, and if Outsurance can't beat your car insurance premium, ask them for 500 Rand cash. And make that 1,500 Rand cash if you have been claim-free and with the same insurer for 3 years. Get monthly savings on your car insurance or cash in your pocket. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. With Outsurance, you always get something out. A licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Crash out in the northwest in the central Rustenburg area. This crash is on the N4. It's causing a big delay both ways. It is just on the western side of the R24 junction, so just on the west of Waterfall Mall, if you like. But there's about a 30-minute delay to get through there. Taxi drivers blockading a section of Elias Motsweledi, Mfolo White City area of Soweto. It seems to be they're targeting some My City routes. I beg your pardon, some Ria Vaya bus routes in that part of Soweto. So there's going to be some disruption for motorists and some problems for Ria Vaya bus users. Durban, the N2 North, heavy this morning. Toti to Prospect and cement factory up towards Umgena Road. Lots of traffic on the N2. Make sure you've got plenty of time to get through. Cape Town's very heavy on the N7 South, coming down from Dunoon towards the N1 highway. The N2 inbound at Khayelitsha stays busy as well. And just back to KZN, northern parts of the province, we're getting some reports who are protesting at Issaquahweni this morning in that central Issaquahweni area. If you normally go that way, sort of to and from Richards Bay, might be an idea just to keep it on the R34 and the N2 highways, your alternatives. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
A very good morning to you. In your SFM sports headlines, it's soccer. The Soweto Giants avoiding each other in the Nedbank Cup semi-finals draw. And in golf news, it's Scotland's Callum Hill who won the Joburg Open after 62 forces playoff. Let's find out more at around 7:30.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
7:10 on this Monday. It's good to be in your company. We are into the second hour of the morning brief here on SAFM. I'm Thulasizwe Simelane. Here's what's coming up on the show over this hour. We'll tell you about Hilton College, one of the most elite schools in the country, the school in KwaZulu-Natal. Well, it's once again at the center of a land claim. The Ngqamalala tribe, led by Inkosi Sikolwa Zuma, is fighting to reclaim ancestral land, alleging their forebears were forcibly removed over a century century ago. The claim, of course, was first lodged in 1998, rejected in 2005 over the argument that it was more of a tribal jurisdiction issue than a restitution issue per se. It went through much of a back and forth, but eventually, about a week ago, last week actually, the Land Claims Court has now ruled that that decision to reject the claim on that basis was irrational and has sent it back to the original Land Claims Commissioner to reconsider. Kaya Sitole, independent analyst, is someone who has followed that story quite closely. He will talk to us shortly here on the show. But we'll also tell you about this. You know, the decisions of Donald Trump. A lot of people wonder why we continue to discuss Donald Trump, but the decisions that he makes, and by the stroke of his pen, those decisions have real life impacts that, people have to live with, including people in this country. Here's one that we will focus on today. Government's concerns about a U.S. withdrawal from the international partnerships funding that have been funding this country's just energy transition have gone from hypothetical to very real in a matter of weeks. Just last month, the energy minister, Thulasizwe Simelane, was expressing the concern that the United States could potentially, at that point, withdraw its share of funding for South Africa's Just Energy Transition Investment Plan, JET-IP, which is a critical initiative for the transition this country from a fossil fuels-based energy mix to cleaner energy sources. Well, that has now happened, and I just happened to check the tracker, the funding tracker of the Just Energy Transition Project. It has 2 red asterisks next to the United States, and it's just dash, 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 dash on the various columns, and then the 2 asterisks are then explained to say the United States has withdrawn from this, and there are serious implications for that. I'll be speaking to Jose Moleshe, an energy and development finance specialist. That conversation coming up in the next few minutes. And then later on in this hour, just at about 10 to 8, we'll be in conversation with Masigo Shiburi, who is the Deputy Chief Electoral Officer of the Independent Electoral Commission. We'll be talking all things to do with the potential of introducing electronic and digital voting and new technologies into how we undertake elections in this country. The mammoth logistical task of undertaking the 2024 national and provincial elections has given the IEC pause for them to reflect and see if this can't be done more efficiently by introducing new technologies. So that conversation, look out for it coming up at about 10 to 8 in this hour. And all of your calls, please put them through to the number 086 000 2032. Your WhatsApp voice notes on 061 410 4107. This is SAFM. We are leading the conversations that move us. The second hour of the Monday edition of the Morning Brief starts now.
Whether it is a CCMA referral, problems with a mechanic, or unfair blacklisting, Clientele legal plans are affordable, and you receive up to 670,000 rands worth of legal services per year. We cover civil, criminal, and labor-related matters. Our legal team will be your support 24 hours a day. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and a licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
Thulasizwe Simelane on the Morning Brief. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
15 minutes after 7. Government's concerns about a U.S. withdrawal from the international partnerships funding this country's just energy transition have gone from hypothetical to very real in a matter of weeks. Just last month, the Energy Minister, Thulasizwe Simelane, was expressing the concern that the United States could withdraw its share of funding for South Africa's Just Energy Transition Investment Plan, JET-IP, a critical initiative to transition the country from fossil fuels to cleaner energy sources. Last week, the Trump administration withdrew from the Just Energy Transition Partnership, and today, if you visit the portal tracking funding for the program, U.S. contributions are marked as zero, with an asterisk, as I said, highlighting the recent withdrawal. I'm joined now by Jose Muleshe, and an energy and development finance specialist. Good morning to you, and thank you for your time, Jose. So tell me about the implications of this withdrawal by the United States. I went to the portal that tracks all the work that government is doing around the just energy transition, and it reveals a picture there, doesn't it, about the impact of this decision?
Thank you to you as well as the listeners. So this funding was intended, let's first mark that it was potential commercial investments to support a transition to a lower carbon trajectory for South Africa, recognizing that when that happens, there will be a huge impact on those who are working in the coal sector, as well as on jobs, as well as throughout, in my view, the value chain of that industry.
Please go ahead.
So the withdrawal means that, firstly, there's a huge gap still in terms of funding, and this was not necessarily earmarked for a particular project. So what was expected was that once projects are realized, like for instance, the transmission project, which is being piloted by the National Treasury, then the funding will go into specific projects. So those projects had not yet materialized, and therefore that's why we say potential commercial investments. So a huge gap that will create, obviously, in terms of those potential investments, and being able to crowd in additional funding, which is the $1 billion that is, I think, that has been lost, and then trying to crowd in more funding that is still required, obviously, is going to create a challenge.
Where will the impact most likely be felt, Jose? Tell me about the work that was being undertaken, and again, I rely on what is published in the Just Energy Transition portal. That much of the work was focused on the region of Mpumalanga, including issues such as coal ash beneficiation programs, the retraining and skills acquisition by people who were affected by the closure of one of the mines there, and the potential closure of other coal-based mines.
Well, there's a list of things that you are mentioning now that were intended for the funding to go into. But I didn't mention before that part of that money has already been spent, which is 56 million, according to the presidency. And in terms of that, the vets did a study that says most of the funding that came into South Africa went back in terms of consultants that were appointed by South Africa, that are from those countries. So the jury is still out on the effectiveness of the actual money. So for now, we are talking about what is the potential. But the reality is that really from an accountability point of view, we need to dig deeper to say, was this money going towards the things that you're outlining, which were supposed to impact positively on communities in Mpumalanga? Komati, for instance, is an example of how a so-called just energy transition should never, ever be done, because there is a failure there that everyone is now acknowledging. And a lot of analysts had warned from the beginning to say, if you don't have a proper strategy as well as a funding plan that is very specific, you can end up saying that you've received the funds, but there is no real impact that you can demonstrate from such. So that jury is still out with respect to how the money has been spent and accountability as far as that is concerned.
So you will have noticed, Jose, in recent weeks, much talk being about this should be a wake-up call to not only African countries, but in particular to South Africa, to say, actually, you should have your own initiatives and find ways to fund them without being overly reliant on donor funding and grants. Does that argument hold in the context of the just energy transition in South Africa? Can we easily replace this $1 billion in commercial capital, 56 million rand in grants?
Well, when it comes to grant to funding, that comes from different sources. There are conditions that you have to comply with. So that therefore means your strategy gets to be to an extent dictated to by the funders that provide the funding. And if you don't have a proper plan and a proper investment plan that says how you're going to spend the money, you can end up not spending it all mainly effectively. So the argument is that, South Africa had a white paper in 1998 on energy policy, which said that you need to diversify your energy sources, and then you need to look at environmental aspects whilst you're doing that. So some argue that the pace in which the decarbonization, due to its impact on the economy, due to its impact on the security of supply, should be crafted very carefully. And there is a feeling in some quarters that that is not the case, and there's just other parties from outside dictating to South Africa, mainly because of the gap that South Africa has. So there is that argument.
And I'm sure you've also noticed the critics of the whole Just Energy Transition program saying that actually this is the off-ramp that South Africa should take to say, given our energy needs, our endowment with fossil fuels, coal and the likes, and juxtaposing that with even other countries in Europe and how they continue to have fossil fuels as part of their energy mix, this withdrawal of funding should be the off-ramp that we take from this unrelenting commitment to the JET. What's your view on that debate?
I think it should be a considered off-ramp, because realistically you can't completely off-ramp, because in terms of funding you are going to require funding. However, I think that South Africa should first and foremost come up with a sensible strategy for how to decarbonize and the pace of decarbonization in the long run. Fossil fuel, I don't think that we should rush into doing that, because as you would know, Eskom, 80% of the generation comes from coal-fired power plants, and if one goes down now this weekend, we had load shedding. So in the absence of something to fill that gap, that is cleaner, for possibly nuclear, possibly renewable energy, but we struggle with transmission infrastructure to integrate some of those renewable energy projects. So that therefore means we need to take a careful stance in terms of how we transition so as not to impact on security of supply. Consider the triangle of security of supply, of equity in terms of social issues, as well as in the environment, but not put the environment only on the one big scale. So a pragmatic approach,
Sure.
I think, would make sense.
All right, makes a great deal of sense. Thank you for your time and your insights this morning. That is Jose Moleshe, an energy and development finance specialist.
Stay on top of all meaningful, top trending stories right here on SAFM. Leading the conversation.
So to this story now. Hilton College, the elite KwaZulu-Natal school, is once again at the center of a land claim dispute. The Ngqamalala tribe, led by Inkosi Sikholwa Zuma, is fighting to reclaim ancestral land, alleging their forebears were forcibly removed over a century ago. The claim, first lodged in 1998, was rejected in 2005 on the basis that it was more of a tribal jurisdiction claim as opposed to a restitution claim per se. But the Land Claims Court has now ruled that that decision was irrational. The case has been sent back for reconsideration, with the court emphasizing that the claim is about racial land dispossession, not tribal boundaries. Let's welcome Khaya Sithole, independent analyst who's been tracking this particular story. Good morning to you, Khaya. Just give us the sense and the importance of this claim. We focus on Hilton College, but it's a wider area, is it not, around the area of Howick?
Good morning and good morning to the listeners. So yes, this is actually part of a rather complicated history of how South Africa has dealt with a particular land claims process. So I think in summary, you essentially have two types of claims that really relate to the land around Hilton College. So the one that we've been talking about for many years was the one relating to labor tenants who were actually people that used to work in the area and in the farms in the area, and then obviously when the law was then passed, it said you could give labor tenants some form of permanence. That was the one claim that Hilton College had to deal with under a separate law. It then turned out that at around the same time there was then another claim that was instituted but under a different law, and this is a claim that says that we used to live in this land and then we were forcefully evicted. So at the point in time when you do lodge a claim, you actually then have to provide a rather detailed history of what happened, who were the people that were in a particular area, when were they dispossessed, and what exactly is the basis of their claim to which part of land. And I think in this particular instance, unfortunately, when the claim was initially filed, there were particular flaws, at least the view taken by the Land Claims Commissioner was that there were particular flaws in that particular application, which meant that they took the view that actually a valid claim had not been established. It is that particular decision now that has now been overturned on the basis that some of the reasons that were advanced for rejecting the claim seem to be more on the arbitrary side. Not that they were wrong, but I think when it comes to matters of land, we have to be a bit more circumspect, particularly when you are trying to get people to piece together what has really been a broken and truncated history for them to prove the validity of their claim.
I don't imagine, Kaya, that the irony and the coincidence is lost on you of, there's a claim that is founded on historical dispossession on a piece of land where one of the most elite schools is now situated. I don't imagine that is lost to you. What does that reveal about the whole conversation about the need to conclude the whole justice around land issue?
I think the Hilton College claim in particular perhaps presents the greatest contrast of what it meant to have particular individuals removed from their land, denied land rights, and then other individuals essentially stepping in and becoming entitled to the land. Whether you look at the Native Land Act or the Native Trust Act of 1936, there were so many laws that essentially created this great disparity. And I think obviously when you're actually in that particular area, the contrast is quite sobering, because on one hand you have essentially representatives of some of the wealthiest families in the land, people who can afford to pay close to R500,000 a year for school fees, and they're living side by side with those who claim that, well, actually this used to be our land, and then there was a law that denied us the right of access to this land, and those are obviously the labor tenants whose claim was essentially finalized a couple of years ago on the back of a constitutional court judgment that then put the pressure on the master of the High Court to actually process the labor tenant land claims that had not been processed. Now, in relation to this particular new one, again, the contrast is going to be very stark, because those that are going to be then putting together the history, and there will be a number of individuals involved that will engage with the communities, engage with the tribes, try to find out exactly who has a valid claim, try to put together a history that can then be presented as a basis for saying that this claim is there. And whenever you read those stories, you tend to hear some rather disturbing tales of how the dispossession happened, and how those that were obviously then affected have then seen generations of their families essentially denied, the type of security and the type of comfort that those that have actually now occupied their land tend to have. And I think the Hilton College land claim probably represents the greatest contrast. There have been many others, but for me it's always been the most harrowing one, particularly when we looked at how the history of the labor tenants claim, who were actually still living in the property, was resolved ultimately.
Lastly, Kaya, to anyone listening and wondering what are the implications for Hilton College and its continued existence on that particular site, it's not as if it's a conversation that will lead to its dislocation, is it? The previous process that for some reason was halted included talking about monetary compensation for the claimants.
But yeah, I think quite simply the college will exist in its current form. There's a big problem in the sense that when the claim was originally put together, the owners, or at least I think that it's the trust that actually owns the land on which the Hilton College is actually placed. They were not cited as respondents. Now, what that implies is that whoever put the claim together was not saying that we want to claim even that part of land. It was more a question of the land around that particular area. And of course, if they decide to refile and then cite the school as part of the land that they're trying to claim, then that's a separate process altogether. But at this stage, we actually don't think the school will be affected until somebody refiles the claim properly and then says that actually this land is included. And on that basis, then we'll have to go back to 1872 is when the school was founded. What actually happened before then? Because if you're going to claim that you were on the land, you'd have to go back as far back as the 1870s and indicate who was there, how were they removed before the school, the construction started. The labor tenants, again, were a very different case altogether because they've lived in the land since 1872. So it was much clearer. It was easier to put the history of their proximity to the school. With this particular land claim, it will be a very interesting process. And unfortunately, when you start the process 30 years after you had the opportunity, a lot of the institutional memory that is necessary to actually make the claim as foolproof as possible has unfortunately been lost.
Kaya, thank you for your time and your insights this morning and for tracking this story over such a long period of time and sharing those insights. That's Kaya Sithole. He's an independent analyst. Do look out for some of his writings on these matters. A few years ago is when I was really following some of what Kaya was writing about this issue. Let's check in now with N. Musa with the latest news headlines.
Good morning. Thanks to us. In the headlines, the ANC in the Eastern Cape have reiterated their call for increased policing resources to be allocated for the province. This on the back of the brutal murder of community activist Pamela Mabini. The Thulasizwe party in Gauteng will be marching against the proposed VAT increase this morning at the Pretoria Church Square. The march by the party follows a postponement of the national budget last month, which was set to be delivered by the Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana. And Israel says it's immediately stopping all electricity supplies to Gaza in an effort to increase pressure on Hamas to release the remaining 59 hostages. I'll have details on these and other stories at 8.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
It's down the northwest this morning. Very heavy delays on the N4 at Rustenburg. It's just on the Costa side of Waterfall Mall, if you like. So central Rustenburg, west of the R24 junction, but very heavy backlogs there. 30-40 minute delays both ways. Must be a quite sizable crash. The N1 coming out of Pretoria stays busy this morning from Montana all the way down to the R21. And we know about the epic failure that is Joburg's ability to deliver functional traffic lights. This morning, the new one is Main and Sloane, which is down. So if you're on that run in from Kyalami, that is a monster queue from sort of before you even get to the Yatske River Bridge, all the way down through Lone Hill, across Machali's Sach and down deep into Bryanston. Major delays. Make sure you've got plenty of time to get through. Rest of four ways battling with traffic lights, about 20 minutes from one junction to the next. That's how bad it is. Malabongwe, exactly the same. Kaya Santa, Stratham Park. Bayers Nordia, exactly the same from Honeydew right through the highway down towards Fairland. Other issues this morning, crash on the R24 coming off the R21 towards Barber Road, so that's quite slow. Durban, another breakdown on the busy N2, this one before Spaghetti Junction, so queues coming through from the M7. There's a crash before Spaghetti Junction going out of Durban, and no traffic lights. Higginson Highway near the N2, so coming from Chatsworth, that's heavily back this morning. Cape Town, N1 from Plattekloof Hill all the way to the city centre. N7 Goodwood up towards Bosmansdam stays heavy, and a lot of congestion around Dunoon this morning. There's a crash on the Malabongwe ramp to the N7 southbound, and that's just backlogging traffic coming through from Rivergate side. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Good morning to you once again, Zai. There's an interesting debate about whether or not the concept of quote-unquote Soweto Giants continues to hold, right?
Yeah.
But let's put that aside. Those that phrase applies to right now, they've managed to avoid one another, at least at this stage. of
For
the
now.
Nedbank
now.
Cup. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll go with the Soweto Giants, in inverted commas, and we'll say the semi-finals are set. Kaizer Chiefs and Orlando Pirates have avoided each other, and Amakosi will take on the winner of the postponed Mamelodi Sundowns versus Sekhukhune United match. That match was postponed due to it being double booked, a stadium being double booked. For the first time, we've got to hear about this, but it was due to the women's under-17 match between South Africa as well as Nigeria that happened at 3 p.m. Now, the Buccaneers, they will meet Marumo Gallants. Gallants stunned Durban City on penalties, and we've got the Gallants coach, Abdusalam Ouadou, believing his charges were deserved winners. Gallants are preparing to face Pirates for the third time this season, having recently beaten them 2-0 in the Betway Premiership when he took charge.
About the draw, what can I tell you? That's, when you arrived in the semi-final, there are only good teams and big teams. So you cannot say that, I'd like to choose Sundown or Pirates or Kaizer Chiefs. I think it's big teams, and we will prepare for that. We will try to recover, and we will go with a lot of confidence and a lot of ambitious. I think we did it once. Why not second time?
Elsewhere, Declan Rice delivered heroics at both ends of Old Trafford to earn Arsenal a dramatic 1-1 draw against Manchester United. Chelsea, they edged a battling Leicester City 1-0 as Enzo Maresca's side move up to fourth in the Premier League. Heung-min Son scored a late penalty to salvage a point for Tottenham against Bournemouth in their 2-2 draw, and Real Madrid moving level on points with leaders Barcelona after their narrowly beat Rayo Vallecano 2-1 in La Liga. The result means Barcelona remain top with a game in hand, while Real are second on goal difference. Cricket, India held their nerve to defeat New Zealand by 4 wickets and win the ICC Champions Trophy in Dubai yesterday. India reached 254 for 6 to secure the win following New Zealand's innings of 251 for 7. Rugby, England move up to second in the Six Nations standings as they roared to a 47-24 bonus point win over Italy at Twickenham. And golf, South Africa's Callum Hill shot a magnificent 8-under-par final round of 62 and prevailed after a 3-man playoff to win the Joburg Open. Here's Callum Hill.
Coming down to 16, I thought we were going to need maybe 1 or 2 more birdies. I thought 16 would have a good chance, and unfortunately bogeyed that. Getting a birdie at the last was just, I knew I was competing with Dylan at that point, who was in our group, so I got one ahead of him, and then you just had to wait and see. Fortunately, the number held up to get into a playoff, and then, anything can happen in one of those, so I was just lucky to come out on top.
And that's where we leave it for now. More sport on the Morning Brief, top of the hour. I'm Zai Khan.
The Business Update on SAFM.
Good morning to you once again in Dowling. Tell me about Lesaka concluding a 500 million rand deal to acquire Recharger.
That's right, Sula. So the fintech group acquiring Recharger, a local prepaid electricity, sub-metering and payments business for about 507 million rands. The deal consists of 332 million rand in cash and 175 million rand in Lesaka shares. And it is expected to expand Lesaka's presence in the private utilities space. Now, Recharger, which has over 460,000 registered prepaid electricity meters, allows landlords to collect utility payments from tenants in advance. Lesaka has 2 divisions: a merchant unit and a consumer segment, which offers products such as unsecured credit, transactional banking, and micro insurance. And so this acquisition, part of Lesaka's strategy to grow its enterprise division in particular and boost its alternative payment offering. The group has been expanding its customer base, doubling it over the past 4 years.
And then we've been gleaning some insights into the behavior and preferences of local investors. Tell me about how our fixed income compares versus equity assets.
So South Africa's unit trust investors continue to favor fixed income investments over equities, and this despite recent strong returns from equity investments. And this is according to findings by the Association for Savings and Investment South Africa. That report revealed 30% of unit trust investments are in fixed interest funds, which are with a further 11% in multi-asset income funds. And this comes as a surprise given that equity portfolios tend to outperform other asset classes over the long term. But I guess in terms of a risk factor, the fixed income space has a less risk when compared to the equities sector. Now, despite this, equity investments have shown strong returns over the past year. The JSE All Share Index delivered a 13.4% return, while global equity funds have performed well, with average annual returns of 14% over the past 5 years. Despite this, investors have been shunning growth assets for years, likely due to high interest rates making fixed interest portfolios more attractive. Now, with rates being lowered, ASISA expects to see more interest in equity markets.
All right, please give us another roundup of market activity here at home and elsewhere in the world.
Kicking things off in Asia, stocks mostly in the red as concerns of deflation in the world's second largest economy continue to spook investors. With that, we've seen the Hong Kong Hang Seng lose about 2%, followed by a near 0.6% decline in the Shanghai Index. Over in the US, futures slipping into the red, reversing last week's gains. Attention in that region shifts to inflation, with consumer and producer price prints due this week. And then coming back home, markets closing Friday mostly in the green, with the All Share up 0.35%. The rand, in the meantime, kicking off the week slightly in the back foot at 18.35 to the dollar this hour.
All right, thank you for that. That's Ntauleng Lechela. She'll be back with one more update for you, and that's coming up just after 8:30 here on The Morning Brief.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Africa Update on SAFM.
For that, let's turn to Advocate Sipho Mantula. Raz, good morning and happy Monday to you. Let's start in the DRC. Tell me about this reward that the government of the DRC is offering for the capture of Corneille Nangaa.
Refreshing morning, Thulas and Jumbo Africa to the listeners. Thulas, remember this was for the trial of last year where they were tried in absentia and they were charged with treason. We are talking of the trio of Corneille Nangaa, a military commander, Sultani Makenga, and another political leader, Bisamiwa Bertrande. These are the people who have been at the helm of the M23 and also challenging the government of Felix Tshisekedi. We know also that the government has called on the international sanctions against Rwanda during this week, Tulas. And this is how you see how this war is now shifting to the search of the M23 rebel leaders, when we already know, Tulas, they are ravaging and occupying different provinces. At the same time, you have a peace process of both Tanzania and both Zimbabwe that SADC and East Africa community have to resolve. But when you are issuing warrant of arrest looking for these three leaders, Tulas, it's going to affect the engagement spaces if one has to negotiate with all the armed groups in the Eastern DRC as well as in the capital city.
Yeah, someone was asking on social media, who do they expect to arrest him for this price of 5 million rand when their own soldiers have not been able to capture him during the fighting with the M23? Tell me about Sudan taking the United Arab Emirates to the International Court of Justice. What's that about?
Tulas, remember that the conflict of 2023, it has been an accusation by the government of Sudan that the United Arab Emirates have been supporting RSF, that they've been supporting the Rapid Support Forces in terms of ammunition. And now they are raising that they've been acts of genocide, because once you refer the matter to the ICJ, what I also pick up, both Sudan and the UAE, they are signatory parties to the ICJ treaty. So it is very important once we can navigate through that. But UAE, it is saying, but Sudan, you are just biting on the wrong tree. You don't have the proof about what you are saying. We are not involved by any way in these issues of supporting the rapid support forces. So this is a trial that is interesting to us, that, like I've said, it is gaining the momentum from the 2023 conflict and how the numbers have been seen now with people dying in Sudan.
And give us an update from South Sudan, please, Sipho. Tell us about this attack on a UN helicopter. What's the UN saying about that?
Remember, UN was trying to extract their members to us from the crisis that happened last week, Thursday and Friday, between the presidency office of Salva Kiir and Riek Machar. Now, the UN is even condemning this attack by saying that this might also be seen as a violation of what we'll call international law in terms of humanitarian law. But at the same time, those who were arrested last week have been released. One can say calm has been restored in Juba, but it is important to look at that this crisis in Sudan has affected the peacekeeping mission in that country, as we have seen that Salva Kiir has been now in confrontation with his Vice President Riek Machar, and that affects the peacekeeping mission to us. It affects even their preparation for the elections, which, like I said, it is not possible that they will happen in 2025.
And then in news relating to our neighbor to the immediate north, Zimbabwe, tell me about their efforts to join BRICS. I saw this on the ZBC social media, and I was fascinated by the reaction of Zimbabweans to it.
No, they have to, but there's a different move that they have officially applied. People can talk out there, but they've submitted application by their Foreign Affairs Minister, Amon Mirairwa, when he was in Moscow last week, that they've applied. And this is because Zimbabwe looks at the BRICS benefits, they look at BRICS advantages on many issues, but others are saying, is it a strategic move or a pure political fantasy? I think that's the part you wanted to hear to us. That the pure political fantasy is what will come from ordinary people saying, but Zimbabwe is still struggling to attract foreign investors. But we have seen to us, China, Russia has been gravitating towards Emerson Damutse Mnangagwa, and I think for them, they will also want to take advantage of the BRICS Bank in terms of how can they assist them in their economic revival. Despite corruption is still that virus in many African states to us.
Yeah, no, look, the part that fascinated me was when the ZBC were listing the countries that make up BRICS.
Yeah.
They omitted South Africa somewhere, and the people who were commenting were saying South Africa, it's in the name, the S is there for South Africa. Why are you leaving them out? It probably was nothing, but you know how people can react on social media. Lastly, Sipho, take me back to 10 March 1994. It was a dramatic day, was it not, in this country?
So that, it's interesting to do an archive where you were involved, when you're part of the traffic of that struggle.
Yeah.
I was involved in the state 1 years ago. The collapse of the then homeland of Lucas Mangope, when he had to retreat on this day because there was a popular uprising to us. And at the same time, Mangope rejected, the late President Mangope rejected the plea to join the elections in April 27, 1994. There were more than 60 people who were maimed and killed to us. Broadcasting Corporation of that time was, there were staff members who were arrested, and also we know he sought the support from the then AWP. And that's how strange it is to us when you see where I was born in my township. Many people died there, but we hardly forget about that story. We can rather say Sharpeville, Langa, but there were struggles 31 years ago. I will always call it the 72 days that shaped our political freedom and our political struggle in this country. Because after that massacre, there were many commissions, and we went straight to the 1994 elections. Asante sana Thulas, as was in the conversation, SAFM observing the human rights man.
All right, thank you for that. That's Sipho Mantula there with your Africa update.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Still very slow coming out of Pretoria this morning. The M1 South from Montana down to Rigel Avenue, maybe just through towards about the R21 interchange before you're out of that. The N14 is heavy. We think there's some issues coming off at the N1 John Foster. So behind that traffic back through Braakfontein and back down the N14, it's heavy this morning, all the way to the R55 Pretoria West exit. From there, making your way up north in towards Pretoria direction. A lot of lights down in four ways. Bright Bryanston area, including this morning the Main and Sloane Junction. So very heavy as you come from Lone Hill. There's a major delay this morning, sort of Kyalami, Lone Hill in towards that Bryanston area. Lots of lights out at other junctions across four ways. Motorists complaining 15 to 20 minutes to get from one junction to the next. Same sort of deal on Malabongwe, same on Bayers Nordia as well. Coming in from the Davyton area, we've had some queuing traffic through to Benoni. It is starting to ease, but there's now a crash on the N12 at Edenvale. So as you come through from Jet Park, that's heavy. And a crash on the R24 at Barbara Road, causing delay coming through from the R21 at the airport exit. Durban, that collision on the N3 outbound before Spaghetti Junction, queuing traffic from Sherwood. There's quite a backlog coming inbound as well from Paradise Valley, Pinetown side through to Spaghetti Junction. That's heavy, and big queues on the N2 moving up through towards Umgeda Road. More queues on the N2 between Queen Nandi Drive and Komashu Highway. That looks like a stationary vehicle up that way. And the Higginson Highway out of Chatsworth, no lights at Mobeni, so that's a really long queue today. Cape Town crash, 35th Avenue at Robert Sobukwe. There's some delays around that very busy junction. And lights are out Stellenbosch Arterial at Noinsfontein, bottom of Cales River, Blackheath area. A lot of congestion, all approaches into that one jammed up. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
And then, how? SK, where are you going with that stuff?
My dog. I'm going whale watching. New hobby, you see. Finally going out to explore the world. Kiri levels, Dwana.
I see the life jacket, but I don't know how an inflatable boat, megaphone, and a fishing rod fits into all of this.
How else am I going to get to the whales, bongs? I need the boat. The megaphone is to do my whale calls, and the fishing rod, it's called ambience. Ambience. If you don't get it, forget about it.
Okay, but SK, you know there aren't any whales here in Germiston Lake.
Ooh, Shem, Mr. Know-it-all. Whales live in the water, and Germiston Lake has water.
Hey, sure, Ntwana, go whale watching in Germiston Lake. Me! I'll tune into Whale with Steve Buckshall, Sundays at 5 p.m. only on S3.
The citizens are not willing to settle for anything less than a win.
And now it's with Haaland and on to Foden. Foden to finish the game. And he does.
However, the Seagulls want to triple their efforts to collect valuable points against reigning champs.
Lovely touch for Mitoma, and Mitoma could be away. Here it is. Mitoma one-on-one. Mitoma, delightful.
This is the Premier League. Witness the superb contest, Manchester City FC versus Brighton and Hove Albion FC, on Saturday, 15 March at 4:30 p.m. Live on S3. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Whether it is a CCMA referral, problems with a mechanic, or unfair blacklisting, Clientele legal plans are affordable, and you receive up to 670,000 rands worth of legal services per year. We cover civil, criminal, and labor-related matters. Our legal team will be your support 24 hours a day. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and a licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane.
7 minutes to 8. Let's turn our attention to this story now. The mammoth logistical undertaking that was the 2024 national and provincial elections have nudged the Independent Electoral Commission to look seriously at futuristic solutions for the conduct of polls. Not only was there an unprecedented proliferation of political parties and with independent candidates able to, for the first time, contest provincial and national elections, the IEC found itself having to print no less than 90 million ballot papers for the 2024 general elections. Currently reliant on a paper-based system, the IEC is now exploring digital solutions, including online voting, to boost efficiency and voter participation. Let's welcome into the conversation Masigo Sheburi, who is the Deputy Chief Electoral Officer at the IEC. Good morning and thank you for joining me this morning. So you have this seminar conference happening next week, and you framed it as something to consider what you're calling e-voting. But what do you conceptualize? How do you conceptualize e-voting in the South African context?
Good morning, Tulas. My name is Musoto Moepia. I know that Masego would possibly have been your man
Yes.
last week. Yeah, they've pulled me.
Apologies for that.
No problem. It's good to be here. Your introduction, it's really spot on in most instances. The session we are having, it's not a reaction. It's a plan. You will recall that in 2013, we had an international conference on e-voting. At the time, the Electoral Commission scanned countries across the world and said, where people vote, how do they vote? And we looked at those that had some online presence and others that were using, as you say, digital ways of voting, and said to South Africans at the time, what do you see and how would you like the future to be like for you? South Africans in 2013 said to us, these things are complicated. We have a country that is unequal in some ways. It still needs some work to be done. And therefore, let's stay with our manual processes. But please, IEC, will you continue to scan the environment and come back? This is our comeback. But it is a comeback we have at the back of a very difficult election and, going into another extremely difficult election.
Yeah.
The plan is not to preempt what is going to happen in 2026 or 2029. The plan is to get South Africans to talk seriously about the challenges we have in our methods of voting at the moment and to check whether e-voting does not carry a promise for us to look at and to explore where South Africans from all walks of life will not be disadvantaged, but instead will be helped to vote in dignity and in the most efficient manner possible.
So say more for me about what problem you're trying to solve. You're saying we've come from a challenging election. What about that election was challenging to the extent that it made you feel that now is the time to seriously return to the conversation about e-voting?
One of those challenges, Thulas, is that there are a number of voting stations. We have 24,000 voting stations. Out of those, about 600 voting stations closed very late and they had long queues. And we do think that if you have a solution like this, you will deal with the issue of queues very easily, and you will be able to then return the result as quickly as possible. Counting manually, it's a very difficult challenge after a long day of a presiding officer who has been up at 2 a.m. to ensure that they drive to the station, they have staff, at 7 they open, at 9 they close, and they begin to count. And these folks are at it sometimes until 6 a.m. This would simplify that process immensely.
How will you grapple with, even in your conceptualization, and I know this will be put through the refinery of ideas that you will have at the conference, but how do you envisage overcoming the key challenges around electronic voting? One, the issue of trust. Two, the reality of internet access that is not even in this country.
Very good questions. The first one, the issue of trust. It's a matter that we're going to work on. We don't think that any solution we bring into this nation will be one that assumes that because South Africans are saying let's adopt this one way of internet voting, we simply go there tomorrow. We think we must work that process, for a period in parallel with the process that we work. For example, Venezuela uses an electronic voting machine, but you actually, whilst you make your choice on that machine by pushing a button, it does print a copy of your choice in a thing that looks like a receipt that you get from a supermarket once you buy groceries. You then take that copy, you put it in the ballot box, and the law requires that you count a percentage of the votes across the country or number of stations at the same time as you do this, to ensure that at the same time as you do, you count, you have the result from the electronic counting, and the two must match. And I think that is a process. I'm not saying exactly the same, but it's a process that in this country, I can contemplate being used because it'll build the confidence that voters have. But there are many other ways of doing it. The second question you raise, it's even more fundamental. There are two ways electronic voting works broadly. The one way is that you apply technology at the voting station. In other words, where voters register and they vote. And there, the commission would have to provide a platform, which is an e-voting type of technology. It does not require people to be voting from their homes, one using cell phone, another using a desktop, another using an iPad, and so on and so forth, which is what we call internet-based voting. Internet-based voting is a little more complicated, but it is an option nonetheless. It is this latter one, the internet voting, that you're raising, which may in fact have issues for connectivity across the country and how one deals with it. All of these are options that we must open up, we must discuss, and because we are not talking about a solution for for use immediately tomorrow, these are matters that long term we need to be working at. India, for example, took more than 20 years to use electronic voting as they use it currently.
All right, let's leave it there. Thank you for your time this morning. That's Mosotumi Apia, the chairperson of the Independent Electoral Commission. Let's check in with Ann Musa with the latest news.
In our top stories, ANC Eastern Cape calls for increased policing resources and Israel cuts supply of power to Gaza. Good morning. The ANC in the Eastern Cape have reiterated their call for increased policing resources to be allocated for the province. This on the back of the brutal murder of community activist Pamela Mabini. Mabini, who was a whistleblower in the Timothy Omotoso rape and trafficking case, was gunned down outside a home in Gqeberha on Friday. The ANC's head of communications in the province, Gift Ngondi.
We have been calling for more redeployment of police. In particular, your TRT Special Forces of Police, including the National Intervention Unit in areas like Gqeberha, because that area has been riddled with crime. Hence, you will see that an activist like this one gets killed so brutally in front of a home. And we are reaffirming that the Minister of Police must deploy more police in that particular area, because every day there are levels of killings in the area. Just last week, one of the former MK leaders who works in one of the security organs of the state was also shot and killed in an area called Zwide.
The Thulasizwe party in Gauteng will be marching against the proposed VAT increase this morning at the Pretoria Church Square. The march by the party follows a postponement of the national budget last month, which was set to be delivered by the Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana. Godongwana will now table the budget in Cape Town on Wednesday. This after parties in the Government of National Unity rejected a 2% VAT increase, citing that it would have a negative impact on South Africans. Sibahle Mota reports.
The city of Tshwane is expected to be a sea of green, black and yellow as MKP members march to the South African Reserve Bank and National Treasury against a VAT increase. Umkhonto weSizwe Party says that today's march is set to raise awareness of the devastating impact of the VAT increase on low-income households and small businesses. The party says that the march will address issues that include the regressive nature of VAT and its unequal impact on the poor, the need for a more progressive taxation system, and the effects of VAT on small businesses and entrepreneurs.
The MEC for Finance in KwaZulu-Natal, Francois Rogers, says the dire financial position in KwaZulu-Natal is due to severe budget cuts over the last 4 years. The allocation to the province has been cut by 70 billion rand since 2021. Rogers says this was as a result of poor decision-making by the ANC government, who, before forming the Government of National Unity, kept bailing out state-owned entities. Rogers was replying to queries on the impact of the budget constraints on provincial departments such as health, who have had challenges in paying service providers, leading to a shortage of medicine. Rogers elaborates.
70 billion rand is half our annual budget. Now, that's got to impact, and we're seeing that impact now on frontline departments such as health, such as education, and such as social development. So what we've been trying to do in the very short space of time that we've been in government is to reprioritize as best we can to try and protect those frontline departments. Obviously, the 25-26 budget comes out now. We're going to continue that process. So it's unfortunately going to be a slow recovery.
Paula Fourie, the second wife of author and playwright Ethel Fugard, has expressed a profound loss following his passing at the age of 92 in Stellenbosch at the weekend. He survived by his wife, children and grandson. Fourie shared that Fugard had been battling health issues and she's now coming to terms with his passing. Fugard, celebrated for work such as Master Harold and The Boys and the Blood Knot, explored themes of apartheid and social injustice, leaving a lasting impact on global theatre. Fourie says his legacy will continue to inspire future generations of artists and activists.
I think what makes it all the more unreal is that this large tree that toppled was just so, if it can he do it, he's had a lot of health setbacks over the almost 10 years that we've been married. It'll be 10 years next year. And before that, and we've always bounced back in the most remarkable way. And I think it was so unreal for me to, maybe I never quite accepted that there would be anything that could best him. So his huge heart will live on in other ways in the world.
And finally, Israel says it's immediately stopping all electricity supply to Gaza in an effort to increase pressure on Hamas to release the remaining 59 hostages. Israel's energy minister, Eli Cohen, said the government may also cut water supplies. The BBC's John Donnison has more details.
Israel cut off most of the mains electricity supply to Gaza early on in the war, but Mr. Cohen has now ordered it to be stopped completely. Now, that will primarily affect the operation of desalination plants, which are crucial for providing clean water. Now, after the blocking of all humanitarian aid last week by the Israeli government, the aim is to ratchet up pressure on Hamas, although it will add to accusations that Israel is committing war crimes.
Recapping the top story, the ANC in the Eastern Cape have reiterated their call for increased policing resources to be allocated for the province. This is on the back of the brutal murder of community activist Pamela Mabini. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Still very heavy out at Rustenburg this morning. This is some crash delays on the N4. It's the central Rustenburg area. It's just on the western side of the R44, Waterfall Mall exit, so quite heavy backlogs in that part of town. The N12 coming into Joburg out of Ekurhuleni, heavy crash near the Edenvale exit, pushing traffic back to Boksburg, and also a crash at the same time on the R24 at Barbara Road, holding traffic exiting the airport or coming into that from the R21 South. The N14's heavy this morning from Pretoria West all the way through Bruckfontein up towards the N1 John Foster. Spaghetti Junction is a mess. There is traffic in all directions, all approaches. Outbound on the N3, inbound particularly heavy from Paradise Valley, south from Ananda, north from the M7, and then further just north of Spaghetti Junction, the M2 just after Umgera Road, so in Nunda Road territory, queues all the way up towards the Kwamashu Highway exit. If you're on your way from the south to the airport, a lot of traffic on your route today. Cape Town, N1 into town, slow go from Plattekloof Hill right through to the elevated freeway. Still plenty of traffic on Marine Drive down towards Sunset Beach area this morning, and a crash on Robert Sobukwe at 35th Avenue, just causing some delays around that junction, top of the airport area. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
A very good morning to you in your SFM Sports headlines. It is soccer, a battle of North versus South this week in the DStv Premiership as Cape Town's finest take aim at the Soweto Giants. And we have tennis action. The world number 11, Mira Andreev, advances to the fourth round, beating Clara Torsen 6-3, 6-love. All the details around 8:30.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
10 minutes after 8 on this Monday. It's good to be in your company. We're into the third hour of the Morning Brief. I'm Thulasizwe Simelane. So over the last 2 hours, we've put quite a number of topics and issues of national importance, we believe they are, that we've put on the agenda for you to consider and perhaps reflect upon and engage us on. Among them, of course, earlier on, I told you about President Cyril Ramaphosa after meeting the leadership of Gauteng as well as the city of Johannesburg, then announcing that there's going to be a presidential Johannesburg working group, and we are told that it will emulate the work that was done by the presidential eThekwini working group. And I've been asking whether you get a sense that this is the pathway to the solutions that Johannesburgers who are weary of dilapidating infrastructure, really. It's crumbling right before your eyes. You see it everywhere. It's not an exaggeration. I mean, some of the potholes you see and the dangers that they pose when you see cars stopping and basically just trying to maneuver and squeeze in onto one lane. The water issues constantly, electricity issues. As we speak right now, a big part of the city, one section, let me say that, let me not exaggerate, a section of the city dealing with an outage that has lasted several days. All of those issues compounding over a period of time. And the president says, I'm putting in place the presidential Johannesburg working group. They have 2 years to undertake this work of turning the city around, and they'll be reporting to me on a constant basis. Your reflections if you live in Joburg, or indeed if you live in eThekwini. What can we as Johannesburg residents look forward to based on this model and your experience in that city in terms of its ability to turn things around? That's one of the issues we've put on the table. Of course, in the last while, I was talking to Mosotho Miepya, the chairperson of the Independent Electoral Commission. We were talking about the conversation that the IEC is putting firmly back on the table now about exploring options for e-voting to deal with the logistical undertaking of staging elections, increasingly complex elections in this country. Last year, they had to print some 90 million ballot papers, knowing very well that they were never going to get a turnout of 90 million. But the election was that complex, happening at various spheres of government, involving political parties, many political parties. Then you added independents to the mix. So it's all getting pretty complex. And the IEC says it's time we have this conversation quite seriously. Those are some of the issues that I thought I'd highlight for you that we've covered over the last 2 hours. But of course, you drive the agenda. The number to dial is 086 000 2032. I'll take your WhatsApp voice notes on 061 410 4107. This is SAFM. We are leading the conversations that move us. The third hour of the Monday edition of the Morning Brief starts now.
Get a true AI business partner from Vodacom Business when you get the Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra on a Red Business 1.7 gig contract for 1,599 Rand per month over 24 months. Enhance your deal. Add 349 Rand extra per month over 24 months and get the Samsung Galaxy Watch Ultra. Available in-store and online. T's and C's apply. Further together. Vodacom Business.
The citizens are not willing to settle for anything less than a win.
And now it's with Haaland and on to Foden. Foden to finish the game. And he does.
However, the Seagulls want to triple their efforts to collect valuable points against reigning champs.
Lovely touch for Mitoma, and Mitoma could be away. Here it is. Mitoma one-on-one. Mitoma, delightful.
This is the Premier League. Witness the superb contest, Manchester City FC versus Brighton and Hove Albion FC, on Saturday, 15 March at 4:30 p.m. Live on S3. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Call Thulasizwe now. 086 000 2032.
All right, let's take your calls this morning. Let's start with Churchill in Mthatha. Churchill, good morning. You heard the conversation I had earlier on with the Minister of Public Service and Administration, Mzamo Buthelezi, and you want to reflect on the responsibilities in fighting corruption.
Absolutely, Thulas. Let me start my conversation by saying, it's quite disappointing for the minister to come on national radio to actually start by saying it's the responsibility of everyone. Yes, we understand that one. And I think he should be apologizing to the families of the lives of Mabika Diekaran, who passed away in this country. Because whistleblowers are not protected. And I want to ask a question. What happened to intelligence? People who were in the payroll, who were in our communities, who were able to detect crime before it actually happens. No, these are the things that we need here. But as long as there's no political will from the governing party, and as long as they are the leading ones in this corruption, there's not going to be any political will. That's the unfortunate part. Because, he should be apologizing to this country and to South African citizens for even starting the conversation like that.
Yeah.
It's really sad, honestly speaking. Yes, we do want to assist, but he knows that people are being killed. People are vulnerable here.
Yeah. All right. No, thank you for that, Churchill. So he did, explain his comments that actually it's people seeking to misunderstand what he was saying. What he was saying is that it's not government's responsibility alone, but Churchill saying there that actually he owes South Africans an apology. That is understood that, it's everyone's responsibility, but government should be taking the leadership role. Let me hear from someone else who also wants to weigh in on what the minister had to say on this matter.
Good morning, Thulas. This Minister of Public Service and Administration, he must go and fix his grammar first before he address the media. If you say it's not the government responsibility, you mean government's got nothing to do with it. Now he's backtracking because now people are challenging his comments. They've been sitting there doing nothing about corruption. He must go and play a role of leadership as government and not try to twist his words. It's Thabo Manyige here.
Yeah. No, Thabo, I hear you. And you're absolutely right. Even I was jolted when I heard that first part of his comments, because it's quite categorical that it's not the responsibility of government to fight corruption. But then, in fairness to him, and we always have to be fair, he didn't correct it only after there was an outcry. Within the same context, he then came back to clarify and amplify. I suppose it was just perhaps a matter of adding the word only in that sentence would probably have, avoided a lot of the confusion and the controversy. But, of course, that has not helped, even though he has clarified what he meant. That controversy and debate continues. But, we have to be fair to him. He did correct it within the same context in which those comments were made. Let me speak to Max in Tshwane. Good morning to you, Max. You want to talk to me about the state of roads in Mpumalanga?
Yes, Thulas, and thanks for taking my call. But let's start to the morning that you introduced the Barberton that the Minister of Class is going there for crime. We've got another place here in Mpumalanga, Lowveld, Thulas, Mkhuhlu Township and Calcutta Police Station. Please check the number of the cases of murder in that area. It's more than 50, and nobody has ever been arrested. The latest one was the SA leader, a regional leader, who was gunned down at the weekend there. This past 4. But you never had the Minister of Safety or Mr. Mkhwanazi in Mpumalanga going there to Mkhuhlu area to address the issue of crime and people that are being killed like flies there. But they've got an audacity to go to Barberton, where the issue is very small compared to the Mkhuhlu situation. But coming to the reason why I call, we've got potholes the whole Mpumalanga, Thulas. of which I was very surprised for a very long time. And why this situation is not being sorted out. When I check Thulas, the person who's heading the construction in Mpumalanga for the roads and transport, it's a foreigner, Ngoni Chiminsoda. We talked, you and I, last week about Zimbabweans that are claiming that they are not getting jobs in South Africa. But we've got a crucial person in Mpumalanga Road and Transport who happens to be a foreigner ahead of locals in a sea of unemployment in this country. But he has been given a task, a huge one, in Mpumalanga to manage the road and construction. How did we came to that point, Thulas?
Sure. All right. So quite a number of issues that you raised there, Max. Thank you for raising them. And of course, I suppose it warrants that at some point we speak to the Mpumalanga provincial government and pointedly ask the questions that you ask. That's Max in Tshwane there, talking about various issues out of Mpumalanga. Nhlanhla, good morning in KwaZulu-Natal. You want to talk about human rights in this country?
Maprad, good morning and thank you for taking my call.
Good morning to you. Thank you for calling.
Maprad, I got a problem about how are we addressing the human rights issue. This month is a human rights month, but you don't get to hear much us debating about our basic rights in Chapter 2 of the Constitution, Maprad.
Sure.
You see, there are so many rights that get to be preached by the politicians themselves first. I'll go to Section 9 of the Constitution, where subsection 2 of it, where it speaks about affirmative action. Affirmative action gets to be preached by politicians about how they get into positions first. They preach our rights for them to enrich themselves. Because this issue of credit deployment is a breach of the Constitution. It shouldn't be allowed. And we're so quiet, we're not talking about it. I don't understand why are we not talking about it, and then we come back, we complain about things are not done. Because the same people who have put, they're not competent.
Yeah. No, I hear you, Nhlanhla. So you are saying where the Constitution in Section 9, subsection 2 envisages measures that can be taken to affirm and advance those who have been affected by historical patterns of discrimination, affirmative action. You are saying that actually the affirmative action that's happening is to affirm politicians.
It has to start there. It has to start there as a head. So that the private sector will get to follow suit. The people in the country too, they will also do the same thing.
All right.
Same thing applies with corruption.
Yeah. All right, Nhlanhla, let's leave it there for this morning. That's Nhlanhla in KwaZulu-Natal. Mulau, you are in Limpopo. Good morning to you. You want to talk about crime in Mpumalanga province. So a bit of focus in Mpumalanga this morning.
Yeah, Abshin, Thulasizwe.
Abshin.
Look, my brother, it's coming a great concern, a big deal. The crime in Mpumalanga is climbing on every day, especially the killing of prominent leaders. It's increasing on daily basis, and a month does not go by without one leader or so and so it's been gunned down, especially in the area of Mkuhla and Bushbuckridge. This is a very great concern, and I don't see ministers and prominent leaders descending to the area to come and see what really the problem could be. Last year, they tried to bring, not last year, year before last, to bring in various groups or departments from the police section. But that was dealing with the taxi issues. But now the crime is climbing, and this is becoming a great concern.
Right.
It is becoming a very great concern. Lastly, that I want to talk about is about the Bushbuckridge roads that is in Thulasizwe. It's surprising that today our premier is a premier. He was NEC for Public Works, Roads and Infrastructure. Nothing has been done about the road from Akonbuk to Thulasizwe. It has had potholes for now over 5 years. It has never been fixed. and this is a great concern.
All right. No, thank you for raising those issues, Mulao. I'll tell you what, here's an undertaking on our part. We will put in a request at the very least for the MEC for community safety in Mpumalanga, but in fact, preferably the Premier of Mpumalanga should come forward, because you're not the first caller to make this call, particularly around issues of crime in areas such as Mkhuhlu and Bushbuck region. I think the people of Mpumalanga, especially those affected by those issues, deserve the engagement at the highest level of the provincial government. So that's a request that we'll be putting through to the provincial leadership, especially the Premier of Mpumalanga.
In times like these, everyone is looking to save wherever they can. But you don't have to be a detective to know that with Outsurance, you could be saving big on your car insurance. Hear it from real Outsurance client Marius.
The great big saving that I've got, 765 Rand, 27% a month on my premium. It's so quick and easy to swap over. I am part of the Outsurance family.
It's a no-brainer. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. Saving on car insurance makes you feel like a winner. And the best part is, if Outsurance can't beat your car insurance premium, ask them for 500 Rand cash. And make that 1,500 Rand cash if you've been claim-free and with the same insurer for 3 years. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. With Outsurance, you always get something out. A licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
Honey, what are you doing?
I'm stretching for tonight.
I thought you're not dancing at bachelorette parties anymore.
Baby, we need the money to put Johnny through matriek mos.
And what's the police uniform for?
The clients feel safer when I wear it.
No, man, just sell your bucky to We Buy Cars. They give the best prices and they pay you within minutes.
Okay, but can I just go and dance one more time, please? You know how much I love it.
No, the buyer's already on his way here.
Wow, okay.
Strapped for cash? Just sell your vehicle to We Buy Cars. The easiest way to sell your car by far.
Call Thulasizwe now, 086 000 2032.
So on the table is the not proposal, because it's been formed, the Johannesburg Presidential Working Group, and according to the presidency, it will follow the model that was followed by the Presidential eThekwini Working Group to try and turn around the situation in that city. And I've been asking what are the lessons that have been learned from how eThekwini was handled that we can look forward to in Johannesburg. Let's hear what you've had to say about that.
Good morning, Fred from Durban. The minister obviously doesn't know what's going on in Durban. He's being lied to if he thinks it's been turned around. eThekwini is in a state of disrepair. No sewage is flowing away. Lack of service delivery across the board.
Yeah, that's not what we want to hear, eh? Not when we are told that worry not, we'll have a working group like we had in eThekwini.
Hi, Thulasizwe, Johannesburg infrastructure and Gauteng in general. Listen, I agree with you. The infrastructure is collapsing. You know, it's from the airport or Aratambo International. The moment you land, the buildings, you know, they are deteriorating. I don't want to lie. And so that's the first impression that we need to fix. So when our visitors come through, they can see a beautiful airport. Thanks. This is Anonymous from KZN.
Yeah, Anonymous, I hear you. Beyond just the visitor-facing issues, I've been insisting that we need to go beyond that. It's one thing to fix up the area, and Nishan Bolton was making the point that let's not throw it out. Let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater. Let's welcome the new vigor and action that has been found, but insist that it should be consistent and maintained even after the G20 visitors, for example, have come and gone, and maintain that momentum for ordinary residents of cities like Johannesburg. And then the other conversation has been about the issue of whistleblowers and their protection or lack thereof, and the proposals that are being put on the table for a bill for the protection of whistleblowers. Let's hear a few of you actually have been commenting on that.
Good morning, Thulasizwe and the listeners. I would suggest that the only way to prevent taking out of whistleblowers would be that if they are threatened or at worst assassinated, that their testimony is regarded as instantly credible and beyond question. That might perhaps give them some protection. Thank you, Claire from near George.
Yeah, thank you. That's an interesting suggestion that talks in the area of the law of evidence, right? How much weight do you give after someone has been killed? How much weight do you give to their testimony? That's an interesting proposal that you make. Of course, sometimes there's not even a forewarning, there's not even a threat. A person is just simply killed because of the understanding of the gravity of what it is that they were about to blow the whistle on.
Good morning, Bra Silas. This is Nkunzi from Kwatema. The only way we can stop these killings of whistleblowers, we must first get rid of corrupt officials in the system. They are the ones who are failing these whistleblowers, because they give criminals information about whistleblowers because they are corrupt.
Yeah. No, thank you for that. Of course, that's one of the many proposals on the table. In fact, not proposals. I think that's the end point. That's what everyone agrees on, that the corrupt officials should be removed from their positions. Other interesting proposals that you can weigh in on. We understand that the conversations around the whistleblower protection bill to be introduced in Parliament a bit later on in the year includes proposals such as financially rewarding whistleblowers by ensuring that whatever proceeds are recovered from the work to fight corruption that they would have blown the whistle on, a portion thereof would then be paid over to the whistleblower in place. A lot of pitfalls and a lot of consideration to be given to that. The pros and cons are being weighed up, whether or not that would work. You know about the impact of whistleblowing in terms of just, the pushback that you face. For instance, the professional consequences that you're likely to face. A lot of whistleblowers will tell you about that. Would that ameliorate for that suffering, giving a portion of the proceeds recovered to the whistleblowers? I don't know. You can weigh in on that conversation as well. But for now, let's check in with N. Musa with the latest news headlines.
Good morning. Thanks to us. In the headlines, South Africa's Electoral Commission will start a public conversation about the possibilities of electronic voting through an e-voting conference in Cape Town today until Wednesday. The ANC in the Eastern Cape have reiterated their call for increased policing resources to be allocated for the province. This is on the back of the brutal murder of community activist Pamela Mabini. And Chinese tariffs imposed on certain U.S. agricultural goods have come into force, signaling an escalation in trade tensions between the world's two leading economies. I'll have details on these and other stories at 9.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Still dreadfully slow at Rustenburg on the N4, although it is moving a little bit better than it was. But a big crash scene, central Rustenburg, just on the western side of Waterfall Mall R40, R24 junction. So there's still considerable backlogs both ways, although it is looking better. Centurion, Pretoria bound, the N14, Krugersdorp Highway. That's heavy today between the R55, Pretoria West exit, and the N1 Brockfontein interchange. Delays coming out of Ekurhuleni on both the N12 and R24 is towards Joburg. R24 out of the airport, a crash before Barber Road, and the N12 Joburg bound crash before Edenvale, causing big delay through to Jet Park territory at this stage. Durban Spaghetti Junction is a mess. There's a breakdown coming south into the 4 level, so from in under it's heavy. There's a crash between Spaghetti Junction and Sherwood on the outbound side, so that's heavy as you come through from Sherwood into that scene leaving Durban, but I think a lot of people having a look at that. So from Paradise Valley into Spaghetti Junction and down through to Sherwood, that's heavy as well. And then there's also a vehicle fire incident further up the N2 just before the Kumashu Highway exit, so secondary delay for those running north. Make sure you got plenty of time to get through that to get up to the airport. Cape Town N1 from Yip to Yaga all the way through to city centres busy. N7 south queuing through Goodwood towards Bosmasdam, and plenty of traffic on the going up the M3 this morning just after Constantia, sort of Weinberg Hill, and then past UCT all the way into Hospital Bend. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Good morning to you once again, Zai. Mara, you know, Zai, you can be dramatic sometimes.
Yes.
Just because I said there's a debate about whether or not the concept of Soweto Giants continues to exist.
Yeah.
I didn't mean you then must change it and tone it down in your story. It's fine.
Could you tell?
Until the debate is settled,
Oh my
you can
goodness.
continue to call them Soweto Giants.
Okay.
And now Cape Sides are gunning for them.
Absolutely. The Soweto Giants and the Cape Warriors. Yeah, we'll go with those two operative words today. It's Soweto versus the Mother City this week. We're talking Betway Premiership. Orlando Pirates will travel to Stellenbosch tomorrow, looking to keep their title hopes alive. But Stellies don't want to roll over after their controversial Nedbank Cup exit to Chiefs. Speaking of Amakosi, they'll be taking on Cape Town City on Wednesday, with coach Nasruddin Nabi hoping his side isn't feeling the effects of their bruising quarterfinal Nedbank Cup clash. Onto cycling, where Tyler Lang followed in his father Malcolm's footsteps by winning the Cape Town Cycle Tour yesterday. The young man from the ASAP World Team had to fight hard for victory. He had been in the second group on the road inside the final kilometre, but the jockeying for position from the front group allowed the chasers back into contention. This allowed Langer to pounce, out-sprinting the 2012 winner, Reinhard Janse van Rensburg, to win his first and his family's fourth title.
I always knew maybe a top 10 was possible to win it. I knew it was maybe possible, but I didn't expect it. Yeah, it's huge. I think it's my fifth cycle tour now. And yeah, obviously first big win for me, so super happy. I had to gamble a bit because I wasn't actually in the front, so I was hoping it would come back together. And yeah, I was lucky in that sense. It did. Everyone was pretty driven to have a bunch sprint there, so came back together right at the end and managed to finish it off in the sprint.
More cycling. The Belgian cyclist Tim Merlier won the first stage of the Paris-Nice yesterday, sprinting to the line to take an early lead in the general classification. Frenchman Arnaud Demer and Italian Alberto Deniz came second and third respectively. On to golf. Carl Phillips of Australia ran off 3 straight birdies to break out of an unexpected duel and played his best golf down the stretch for an 8 under 64 to win the Puerto Rico Open, his first PGA Tour victory. And Russell Henley has won the Arnold Palmer Invitational for the biggest victory of his career, and that's how he came, beating Colin Morikawa. And tennis, the defending champion Iga Swiatek edging closer to an unprecedented third straight Indian Wells WTA title, overwhelming Diana Rastremska 6-love 6-2, Katie Bolton knocked out by Elena Rybakina 6-love 7-5, and the world number 11 Mira Andreeva advancing to the fourth round, defeating the world number 1 Clara Tauson 6-3 6-love. And in the men's draw, the 12th seed Holger Rune came back from a set down to defeat the 18th seed Ugo Humbert 5-7 6-4 7-5. Rune will take on the 8th seed Stefano Tsitsipas for a place in the quarterfinals. More sport around 12:30 with John Herrick. I'm Zai Khan.
The Business Update on SAFM.
Let's say good morning to Ndauleng Lechela once again. Ndauleng, tell me about Rainbow Chicken's turnaround strategy. You're saying that it's starting to bear fruit.
That's right, Tulas, and this resulted in profits surging more than 14-fold to 317 million rand. This recovery follows the impact of South Africa's worst bird flu outbreak in 2023, which resulted in the loss of a third of the national chicken flock. So it is somewhat from a low base. Now, despite this improvement, the company remains cautious, warning of the potential for further outbreaks. Rainbow pointed to slow progress in the government's vaccination campaign, which has been hindered by costly monitoring and testing requirements. Now, the South African Poultry Association has called for government subsidies for vaccinations and compensation for farmers who incurred losses during the previous outbreak. Rainbow echoed these concerns, stating that the threat of avian flu during the winter months is real. Now, Rainbow is the latest company to sound the alarm about avian flu outbreaks, joining Quantum Foods, which expressed similar concerns late last month.
And then in mining, Ndauleng, tell me about the lower metal prices and how they've weighed on African rainbow minerals.
So the diversified miner founded by Patrice Motsepe saw earnings plunge 49%, this on the back of falling commodity prices. And in response to this, the board has slashed the interim dividend by 25%. Now, ARM's operations were impacted by challenging market conditions, including depressed PGM prices, declining iron ore prices, and lower manganese and thermal coal prices. The company says it's focusing on preserving cash while completing ongoing capital projects. Operationally, ARM reported lower iron ore production volumes, mainly due to reduced offtake from AMSA. Unit costs remained under pressure due to lower production volumes and above inflation cost increases. PGM production, in the meantime, those volumes ticked slightly higher, but mining development costs were higher due to the mine being in ramp-up phases. Moving forward, the group said they'll be eyeing copper assets.
All right, Dowling. Lastly, give us a sense of what the markets are likely to be looking like on this Monday.
So local markets likely to be in for a mixed open. And in terms of company news, traders will wake up to numbers from Impact and AVI. On the currency front, the local unit pulling back this morning from a near 4-month high, which it hit last week, but it's still relatively stable. It's sitting at 18.29 to the dollar this hour. In Wall Street, futures are in the red despite last week's gains. Traders on that front eyeing inflation numbers, which will provide clues on the Fed's next move. Inflation also in focus in Asia. Chinese consumer prices on that front weighing on sentiment. And with that, we are seeing those markets mostly in the red this morning.
All right, thank you for that. Ntawuleng Lechela there. She's been keeping you updated on business, economics, as well as the markets for the last 2.5 hours here on the Morning Brief.
Whether it is a CCMA referral, problems with a mechanic, or unfair blacklisting, Clientele legal plans are affordable, and you receive up to 670,000 rands worth of legal services per year. We cover civil, criminal, and labor-related matters. Our legal team will be your support 24 hours a day. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and a licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
The citizens are not willing to settle for anything less than a win.
And now it's with Haaland and on to Foden. Foden to finish the game. And he does.
However, the Seagulls want to triple their efforts to collect valuable points against reigning champs.
Lovely touch for Mitoma. Mitoma could be away. Here it is. Mitoma one-on-one. Mitoma, delightful.
This is the Premier League. Witness the superb contest, Manchester City FC versus Brighton and Hove Albion FC on Saturday, 15 March at 4:30 p.m. Live on S3. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Across South Africa, online and on radio. SAFM, let's talk.
Let's turn to this story now. President Cyril Ramaphosa has emphasized the urgent need for the full implementation of the Expropriation Act in order to address urban decay in cities like Johannesburg. His remarks, made during a 2-day visit to Gauteng, highlight the growing concerns over hijacked and abandoned buildings, crime and failing infrastructure in the city. The president proposes the use of this new law as a tool to reclaim these spaces for the public good, aiming to revitalize Johannesburg through urban renewal, improved security and the provision of housing. Let's welcome the Deputy Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure, Sihle Zikalala, to take that conversation forward. Good morning to you, Deputy Minister. I've got to thank you for your time. So from your understanding, how exactly would this work from what the President is proposing? How would it work? Would it be basically that being route one, that you expropriate these hijacked and abandoned buildings in order to turn them to social housing and other facilities? Or is it a matter of going through the many hurdles that have been put in place by the new Expropriation Act before you get to the point of expropriation?
No, it is now a straightforward issue. The Act is clear on how to ensure expropriation. In this regard, the Act dictates that the Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure remains the custodian of Expropriation Act. Is the one who must execute. In this regard, the President is quite correct, and this is very important. So what we are expecting here is that the municipality, the city of Joburg, once they've identified those buildings, they will then apply to the minister for the minister to expropriate those buildings and see which ones could be offered for the use by the municipality or could be offered to other departments or could be utilized for government to generate income. In the process of implementing the Act, the minister will have to inform the owners of those buildings of an intention to expropriate. And once that is done, the minister will have also to send an evaluator to conduct an evaluation of those buildings. And once that is done, the evaluator will come with a price, even if it is nil. If it is nil, it based also, the evaluation should take into cognizance the history of the building, how is it utilized, and what is its impact in the current status. And in many of these buildings, you find that currently these buildings are posing a serious danger to the livelihood of the people. You will remember a building that burned in Johannesburg. All of those things should be avoided. But you find that the buildings are compromising other buildings because they've not been maintained. As a result, it leads to economic decay. And that's why we must expropriate.
Expropriate, but which one will be route one? And we need to be clear about these matters, Deputy Minister, I would say, given the confusion, miscommunication and outright disinformation that has characterized this particular issue. As government, as you are talking about accelerating the implementation of this act, when you apply that to the issue of buildings in the inner city, hijacked buildings and the like, which one are you hoping to take as route one? Is it expropriation with compensation being a figure higher than nil? Or is it your preference that actually these are the exact instances where the expropriation should be calculated to be nil?
Well, these buildings are posing threats. They are accommodating more than required people. Some cases they are nest for criminal activities. And therefore, route one is nil compensation. And I stand on words of the President that this must be done. And it is in the interest of the public to ensure that we protect the citizens and the livelihood of the people who are in the inner city and the business community. We must restore the glory of our CPDs.
So it is your argument, and of course, it probably would be tested in the many cases that would likely play out. But it is your argument that the public interest, which is a requirement in terms of this law, would dictate that these are instances where there should be nil compensation paid.
Definitely so. These type of buildings, they are hijacked, others are vandalized. They are a risk. We can't pay for something that is already a risk to the people. And therefore, these buildings should form part of those that are part of expropriation with nil compensation.
Here's a big challenge, though, before you even get out of the starting gates, Deputy Minister. Your boss, the minister, who's charged with implementing and overseeing the full implementation that the president is calling for, is part of a party that is opposing the Expropriation Act in its entirety. Well, those elements that it finds to be problematic. I'd say to you, he's very much unlikely to agree because the way the process is supposed to work, an organ of state identifies a building and then approaches and says, we've done these processes X, Y, and Z, and goes to the minister and says, expropriate. I have a feeling you will have an unwilling hand in Dean McPherson.
Well, this is not an issue of an ideology, and it is not an issue of an attitude. It is a straightforward issue where there is an act, and the minister will be expected by his oath to implement the act. It is not whether we like it or not. Number of us have before implemented acts that we don't like. And I think that will have to prevail. And therefore, with due respect, he will have to implement the act. The Minister of Public Works will have to implement the act.
All right, let's leave it there for this morning. Thank you for your time. That's Sihle Zikalala. He's the Deputy Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Let's get an update on the N14 Krugersdorp Highway. If you're going out to Pretoria, it's been a badly backed up route this morning, even by its sort of own standards. So you'll get to the R55 Pretoria West exit, and then you'll just hit the traffic. It's a crash before Brockfontein. It's a crash before the N1 highway that's causing that delay. R21 towards the airport, now queuing into the roadworks opposite Tembisa. Delays coming out of Ekurhuleni as well on the R24. Crash at Barber Road, so if you're leaving the airport, it's heavy, and a big delay on the N12 from Jet Park through to a crash just before the Edenvale exit. Collision on the Mike 1 North before Greyston Drive, so going up from Houghton through Melrose into Sandton busy, and those coming south through Greyston towards Corlett busy having a look at that as well. Durban Spaghetti Junction's been pretty badly backed up today. A crash on the outbound side between Sherwood and 4 Level causing a delay, and I think it's onlooking coming in from Pavilion Mall that's keeping traffic slow on the way to Durban through 4 Level, and there's a breakdown before you get to Spaghetti Junction on the N2 southbound, so some extra pressure from Mgene Road side today. Cape Town, whole pile of pressure in Muizenberg, Beach Road onto Atlantic to Main Road, and Main Road as you go north from St James up into Muizenberg, really heavy traffic there, and southbound it's all clogged from St James going down south towards the Cork Bay area. Highways fairly busy, the busier one, I guess the busiest of them all, the N1 Platiclefil right through to the elevated freeway in the city centre. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Fizzy drinks and fruit juices can make our children sick. Sugar is dumped into their bodies with every sip, which could lead to obesity, heart disease, and diabetes as they age. We must protect them from drinks high in sugar. Demand a stricter health promotion levy now. Sign the petition on heala.org. That's HEALA.org.
Call Thulasizwe now. 086 000 2032.
All right, let's make the most of the remaining minutes of this show. Let me start with a voice note. Earlier on, I was talking about the eThekwini Presidential Working Group. We are told a similar pathway and model to the problems in Johannesburg will be followed, with the result that now we have the Johannesburg Presidential Working Group. And I was asking you to reflect if you know what the Presidential eThekwini Working Group was able to achieve that can be emulated by a city in crisis like Johannesburg.
Good morning, Thulas and the listeners. Thulas, what lessons are they going to learn from eThekwini task team? Because eThekwini is in a state of decay. There is nothing happening at eThekwini that inspires or has lessons for anyone to learn. Bye.
Sure, that's not what we want to hear, hey? We are in dire straits in Joburg, and we are hoping against hope that somehow there'll be solutions that will be forthcoming from the Presidential Johannesburg Working Group. We are told they've been given 2 years to get their work done, to turn the city around. They will report occasionally to the president, frequently to the president, and they'll be following that model. So if you're saying that there's nothing to emulate there, yeah, that's not what we want to hear. Andile in Mpumalanga, good morning. You want to talk about the same issue, the Presidential Working Group in Johannesburg?
Yes, thank you, Tulas. Thank you for your time. I want to find out where is this president living? Is he living in South Africa or in Botswana? Because he's talking
in
about.
Joburg.
I don't think so, because he's talking about a turnaround in Durban. Which Durban is he talking about? That there's been a turnaround. Well, if I can ask you, Tulas, when last did you visit Durban?
It's been a while. It's been a while. But tell me, Andile, is there? I know that we as people want to see radical change. Are you saying to me there's not even a hint, or just the basics are starting to turn around? And yeah, okay, we're not there yet, but we're starting to see the direction.
I know.
Nothing.
In fact, we are going back 10 steps to Tulas. I came to Durban in 1999 when I came to study. Durban was so beautiful. It was a place to look for. It was a place to visit. Right now, I can ask anyone, are you eager to come to and visit Durban? Just ask a person who's been to Durban last year for Christmas. He'll tell you, I don't think I'll ever go there again. So I don't know what the president is talking about. If he says they must come and take lessons from Durban, whatever. No, Tulas. He's fooling us.
All right. Thank you, Andile. Right. Thank you for that. That's Andile in Mpumalanga. Let me take a call from Thabo in Kronstadt. Good morning to Thabo. We expect the minister to finally take to the podium and deliver the budget speech. Do you think it will happen?
Well, thank you. That is what the tell people news they want to hear. We are sitting now in the dark because now we know nothing. And it's one day now going to that. And now, please, let us know now. DA is agree. We're going to get a surprise. Now, minister is going to announce the budget. What is going to happen there?
Sure.
And two, quickly, we want the president of EFF. He must come and clarify, because now I read the newspaper, ANC can join EFF. What is going EFF to say now about expropriation of land without compensation? Because we needed the situation to clear. Tell us news what we want to hear. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that, Thabo. Wanting clarity on what is going to happen on Wednesday. Will the budget be delivered one way or another? Well, my understanding might be a possible sign-off on the budget. I don't know. I don't have the inside information, but my understanding is that it will now be tabled once again by the minister for final consultations with the cabinet. Whether or not the VAT increase remains on the table depends on which sources you are reading. Some sources suggesting that there might be a very small VAT increase, but will it be approved? Will it have the necessary approval from the Government of National Unity Partners? That is the big question. Kosinati in Germiston, good morning. You want to talk about the liquor board and handing out of liquor licenses?
Yes, morning, Thulas. Thank you for taking my call. Mr. Thulas, it's a little bit concerning. I'm saying in Eguruleni, but the challenge is that when you visit towns like Germiston, each and every corner, it's an outlet of selling alcohol. So I want just to come and address us. How do they issue licenses? Because most of our people, when they apply, they are not getting. But if they are only by our brothers, international foreigners, our foreigner brothers, they just issue them fast. I don't know, Mr. Thulas. And my second point, Mr. Thulas, maybe you can call Mr. Kagaza on board, the mayor of Ukuruleni, to come and maybe address us. Yes,
to address us on which specific aspects, Mr. Kagaza?
In terms of, you see, if you still remember, if I will tell you, they said Germiston, while the issue now is Joburg, Germiston is going to be revitalized and be built. And I remember the other time we were promised, if I'm left back, Mr. Ramaphosa, he promised us a university at Ukuruleni. But by then it was the mayor, Mr. Muzwandile,
yes,
who was promising that.
I remember that very well.
Germiston was going to be revitalized. But since from there, as I was listening you talking to the Minister of Deputy Minister of Public Works at the hijacked building, I think maybe you can call Mr. Kagaza one day to come and address us.
Great stuff. Kosnati, thank you for that. That's a really good suggestion because if you know the decay of Germiston, I mean, if you were tracking it, I mean, it's probably one of those stories of what not to do with a city, right? I mean, it doesn't take much. Just over the last decade, 2 decades or so, Germiston has really deteriorated, especially the inner city. The deterioration there has been acknowledged by many, with undertakings that there would be a renewal. Thula in Bedford View, good morning to you. You want to talk to me about turning around Johannesburg? We have a presidential Johannesburg working group, Thula. Why are you worried? Relax. It's under control.
City, and you can never fatten the cow on the day of market. Yes. You can never fatten the cows. Just because of this G20 side, they're saying we'll do this and this. How many years has it taken for the city to get to the, for this city to get to the situation they are in?
So they're fattening the cow on the day of market.
Exactly my point, Ngiyabonga. Sure.
All right, Thula in Bedford View there. That's how we come to the end of today's edition of the Morning Brief. Don't fatten the cow on the day of market. Take your time to make sure that you achieve what you want before the day of market comes. But importantly for me, whatever we do under the guise of preparing for G20, it would really be sad if that momentum is not then taken and leveraged to ensure that we maintain, right, for the sake of the people that live in Johannesburg and similar cities on a day-to-day basis. That's how we come to the end of today's edition of the Morning Brief. Thank you for listening and thank you for your engagement. The Talking Point is up next here on SAFM after the news.
In our top stories, IEC holds a voting conference in Cape Town and China's tariffs on US farm imports kicks in. Good morning. South Africa's Electoral Commission will start a public conversation about the possibilities of electronic voting through an e-voting conference in Cape Town today until Wednesday. The conference will facilitate informed national dialogue on the feasibility, sustainability and policy